Hello, dear viewers of Paranormal M channel. I truly love what I do. Every day, I have the chance to join you on these mysterious journeys and wish you a good night. It's such a wonderful feeling. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Now, let's get ready for bed and dive into some mysterious experiences together. Good night. I've never really forgotten this, even though it happened years ago when I was still in college. It was around 4 in the morning, and I'd gotten up earlier than usual because exams were coming up. Normally, my friend and I would start studying at 5, but that morning I wanted to get a head start, so I took a quick shower and headed out to wake her up in the next dorm building. Our campus was really dark at that hour. There weren't any streetlights, and the school was pretty far from town, so once you stepped away from the dorm entrances, it was mostly just darkness. The path between our buildings was short, maybe 3 or 4 minutes on foot, with a low hedge along one side and a few scattered trees. I was about a minute away from her dorm when something happened that stopped me cold. Out of nowhere, this bright, almost blinding ball of light appeared behind me and moved into view. It was about the size of a small soccer ball, maybe floating a little above waist height in front of me. I just froze. What scared me most was how silent it was. Completely silent. And even though it was incredibly bright, it didn't seem to light up the whole area the way you'd expect. It was just there, suspended in front of me, almost like it was aware of me somehow. I know that sounds strange, but that's honestly how it felt. I remember this wave of dread coming over me. I felt rooted to the spot, like my body wasn't fully listening to me. I kept telling myself, "Don't just stand here, look away, run." But before I could actually do anything, it started moving. It hovered for a second, then shot off so fast that if I'd blinked, I probably would have thought it vanished. And just like that, the fear eased. I looked around, even checked near the trees to see if it had gone behind one of them, but there was nothing there. No sound, no trace, nothing. After that, I ran the rest of the way to my friend's dorm. But the weirdest part is that when I finally got there, people were already up and moving around, and what should have been a really short walk had somehow taken me close to half an hour. I honestly don't remember standing there for that long, which has always bothered me almost as much as the light itself. I've thought about it so many times over the years. I've seen all kinds of theories online, and the closest thing I ever found was something called ball lightning. That description felt oddly similar to what I saw, but I still don't know whether that fully explains it. So I guess I'm sharing this because I still wonder about it. Has anyone else ever seen something like that? Or heard of a logical explanation for an experience like this? So, I want to tell you about something that's been happening to me, because honestly, I still don't fully understand it. A few mornings ago, around 3:18 a.m., I woke up from another terrifying dream. It shook me so badly that I decided I couldn't stay in the boarding house anymore. I packed a few things and went home to stay with my family for a couple of days because I just didn't feel safe being alone. When I got home, my family asked me what was wrong, and I told them everything. I'm from the Philippines, and where I grew up, a lot of people believe there are other beings around us. Things we cannot always explain, things we're taught to respect and not disturb. My mother listened carefully, and later that afternoon, around 1:30 p.m., she asked me to go with her because she wanted someone to help figure out what was happening to me. In our culture, there are traditional healers people turn to when they think something strange or spiritual may be involved. They deal with things people describe as capre, duende, or encanto, beings we're warned not to take lightly. The healer my mother brought me to was a Mangtatawas. I agreed right away, because by that point, I really wanted answers. The healer began by putting oil on my forehead. Then she pressed a small piece of paper there and started chanting words I didn't understand. Maybe Latin, maybe a prayer. I'm not really sure. After a while, she told me there really was something attached to me. Then she carefully peeled the paper away, and I saw this dark image on it. It looked like shadows inside a house, a woman and a child. And the strange part is, I already felt deep inside that those figures meant something. I didn't even tell the healer what I saw, but she said the presence seemed drawn to me because of my soft features, my round face, my cheeks. She said sometimes entities become attached in ways that don't always make sense to us. Then she asked how I usually sleep, and I told her I often sleep flat on my back. She immediately told me not to do that anymore. She said I should sleep on my side instead, keep a rosary close to me, drink water, and pray before bed every night. After that, she placed her hand on my head and chanted again 3 times. Her voice was calm, but serious. Before we left, she told me very clearly to follow everything she had said. There was one more thing that confused me. She held my hand for a while and looked closely at my palm. Then she said, "It's still connected, so that's good." I didn't understand what she meant at first, but when my mother and I got home, I asked her. She told me the healer was checking whether the lines in my hand were still connected, because if they weren't, it could mean the entity was trying to replace me or take me somewhere else. Hearing that honestly made me feel 2 things at once: relief, because I was still myself, and fear, because even the thought of being replaced was horrifying. Then came the dream that scared me the most. That same night, again around 3:18 a.m., I had another nightmare, but this one felt different. It felt layered, like I was dreaming inside another dream. I share a room with 2 other girls. I'll call them Jessa and Elaine. We have 2 double beds in the room. Elaine and I sleep near the window, with me on the top bunk and her on the lower one. Jessa usually sleeps on the other bed near the door. In the dream, I thought I had already woken up from a nightmare. Elaine was shaking me, telling me to get up, and Jessa was there too. They were both urging me to leave the room. Then suddenly, I woke up again. But I didn't realize I was still dreaming. That's when I knew I was still inside the dream. I tried over and over to force myself awake, but I couldn't. I started panicking. In the dream, I could see myself lying on the bed with my eyes closed, and that alone felt so unnatural that it made me more terrified. I reached for the blanket and pulled it over myself. And then, I heard a voice beside me. It said, "Aren't you going to move and make room for me?" I froze. There was someone lying next to me in that dream, but I couldn't see who it was. I only heard the voice. And when I recognized it, my whole body went cold, because it was my own voice. I tried to scream. In the dream, I was shouting as hard as I could, but no sound came out. I was drenched in sweat, struggling to breathe, completely trapped in that moment. And then, I woke up for real. The first thing I did was grab my phone from beside my charger. My hands were shaking. When I looked at the screen, the time was exactly 3:18 a.m. That was the moment I called my father. I told him everything, and he stayed on the phone with me. He told me he wouldn't hang up and that I should try to sleep again while he stayed there, listening, making sure I wasn't alone. That helped more than I can explain. What really scared me was that this time, I didn't see a black figure. It wasn't a shadow. It was a voice, and it sounded exactly like me. And it keeps following the same pattern. Inside the dream, I realize I'm dreaming, but I still can't wake myself up. That's why I'm so confused. I don't feel especially stressed. I don't feel deeply anxious. I even have an exam coming up, but in my heart, I've actually felt peaceful lately. And still, this keeps happening. When I looked at myself in the mirror that morning, I looked exhausted. My eyes looked like they had given up. But I was too scared to sleep again because I was afraid it would come back. That's the part I can't understand. Why does it keep happening? It's been going on for a long time, but lately, it feels like it's getting worse. I pray every day. I pray before I sleep, when I wake up, and before I leave the house. I hold on to my faith, and still these nightmares come back so vividly that sometimes, in the middle of them, I feel like I'm dying. And honestly, I still don't know what to do. I was about 7, maybe 8, the first time I ever stayed overnight at a friend's place. Or, well, I was supposed to stay overnight. My friend's name was Mika, and that evening it was just the two of us and his dad in this small apartment. At some point, not long before it got dark, his dad said he had to step out for a quick errand and left us there alone. For Mika, that wasn't really a big deal. His dad worked a lot, and he was used to being by himself for stretches of time. I wasn't, but at first I was too excited to think much about it. We were sitting in the living room, playing handheld games and watching videos on a tablet, just completely wrapped up in our own little world. Then, during one quiet pause, we noticed music coming from the kitchen. There was this old radio sitting on the counter, something Mika's dad had brought back from a trip years earlier. We figured he must have forgotten to switch it off before leaving, so we just walked in there, turned it off, and didn't think twice about it. After that, we made these frozen yogurt treats, the kind where you pour yogurt into little molds with sticks and leave them in the freezer until they turn into something like popsicles. We were very proud of ourselves for that. Then we went back to the living room and kept playing. A while later, when we decided the yogurt pops were probably ready, Mika said he'd go get them. He walked toward the kitchen, but then he stopped halfway down the hall, turned around, and came right back. I still remember his face. He looked pale. He said, really quietly, that he didn't want to go in there alone because something felt wrong. So we went together, and when we stepped into the kitchen, the radio was on again. I know how that sounds. I really do. But I'm still completely sure we had turned it off the first time. We both were. We just stood there staring at it for a second, not saying anything, because suddenly the whole apartment felt different, like the air had changed. We grabbed our frozen yogurt pops as fast as we could, switched the radio off again, and went straight back to the living room. This time, we shut the door behind us and turned our video up way louder than before, like somehow noise could make us feel safer. Neither of us wanted to go back into the kitchen after that. When Mika's dad finally came home, we stayed put until he opened the living room door. And the first thing he did was scold us, because the radio in the kitchen was on again. Not just on, apparently, blasting. That was the part that really got to me, because we hadn't gone back in there. Not long after that, my mom came to pick me up earlier than planned. She'd gotten off work sooner than expected, and honestly, I was relieved to leave. So that sleepover ended before bedtime even came around. What makes this story stranger is that I don't remember every detail perfectly. A lot of it came back because Mika and I talked about it years later on a call, and we ended up piecing it together between the two of us. Both of us remembered the same feeling, though. That kitchen, that radio, that moment when it turned back on, and neither of us wanted to admit how scared we were. Mika moved away not too long after, and his dad got rid of the radio when they left. Nothing else ever happened, at least not that I heard. But even now, I still think about how certain I was when I pressed that off button the first time. You know, one of the strangest parts of my childhood happened in the very first apartment my family ever lived in. It was me, my mom, my dad, and my little brother. And we lived in this 5-story apartment building that had originally been built by a bank. Our apartment was near the very top, with nothing above us except the roof and the open sky. Years later, when I got older, maybe around 16 or so, I started asking my mom about the different places we had lived. Every single time that first apartment came up, she would tell me these unsettling stories about things that happened there. Some of them happened to her, and some of them happened to me when I was too young to even remember. One story she always told me was from when I was still a baby, so little that I couldn't walk or talk yet. During the coldest winter nights, she would bundle me up in these thick wool clothes, really tight around the neck, the kind that were hard to put on and even harder to take off. She'd tuck me into bed, make sure I was warm, and go to sleep. But then in the morning, she would find me lying on the floor with all the wool clothes taken off, completely off. And the weird thing is, there's no way a baby that small could have done that alone. Honestly, even when I was older, in elementary school, I still struggled to get those kinds of clothes on and off by myself. She said this kept happening again and again until she finally bought me a necklace with Ayat al-Kursi engraved on it, because in our belief, it offers protection from jinn. After that, according to her, it just stopped. No more waking up like that. Not long after, when my parents were finally able to afford it, we moved out of that apartment. Sometimes I still wonder what was going on. Maybe something was messing with me. I really don't know. My mom also used to tell me about the early mornings, around Fajr prayer time, when my dad would leave for the mosque and she'd be alone in the apartment with me as a little child. She said she would hear these loud noises coming from above us, heavy thumping, like animals running around, mixed with the sounds of cats screeching and dogs barking. But that's what made it so creepy. There was nothing above us except the roof. No upstairs neighbors. No nearby building close enough for the sound to make sense. Just the roof and the sky. And then there was something else she swore she saw more than once. She said one time she looked down the hallway and saw a little girl just standing there in the middle of it. Not moving, not speaking, just standing there. My mom said she forced herself to ignore it because she believed that if she showed fear, whatever was there would only bother her more. The one thing I personally remember most clearly happened when I was around 6. My parents had gone out to the pharmacy for a little while and left me and my little brother at home. To keep us from getting into trouble, they locked us in their room. There was this wall calendar in there with a picture of a family exchanging gifts. Just a normal flat picture, nothing special. But the moment my parents left, I swear that picture changed. The people in it started turning their heads and looking right at me, and smiling. Not a nice smile either, a really unsettling one. I panicked and ran to hide inside the wardrobe, but my little brother just stayed where he was like nothing was happening. He didn't seem bothered at all. And every time I peeked through the wardrobe door, those people in the picture would still be looking straight at me, like they knew exactly where I was. I've got to be honest, this still feels strange to talk about. For a long time, I kept wondering whether I imagined it all, or whether something really did happen to me. I've had a few experiences I still can't explain, but this one was by far the strongest. This happened around 7 years ago, when I was about 21. At the time, I was living in an apartment with my brother and a couple of friends. About a week earlier, a friend had offered me DMT. I'd never tried anything like that before, and when I did, almost nothing seemed to happen. I remember closing my eyes and seeing this brief, odd visual, but it vanished within seconds. What stayed with me was this feeling. That's the only way I know how to describe it. A presence, almost. subtle but completely real to me. I wasn't someone who meditated or did anything spiritual back then, but for some reason I started sitting quietly and focusing on that feeling. The more I did it, the more unsettled I became. Every day it felt like I was drifting farther from what I thought of as normal. I started sensing presences around me, like I wasn't alone even when I clearly was. Then one afternoon, nobody else was home. I was sitting alone in the kitchen upstairs, perched on a stool by the counter, with the stairs behind me. And all at once, that feeling came back, but this time it was so much stronger than before. It didn't feel internal anymore. It felt like it was in the room with me. And I know this sounds wild, but I actually said out loud, without turning around, "Come closer." Right after that, I heard something on the stairs. Footsteps. A faint metallic sound too, like chains or something brushing against the steps. I froze, but I didn't look. Part of me didn't want to break whatever was happening, so I said it again. "Come closer." And the feeling intensified. It really did seem like something was moving toward me. The air felt charged, almost electric. My whole body started trembling, not from fear exactly, but from the sheer intensity of it. It felt like standing near something unbelievably powerful. Then I felt hands on my shoulders. The second that happened, it was like a surge of electricity shot from the base of my spine all the way to the top of my head. And when it reached my head, I saw this image in my mind, a flower opening, blooming. Then suddenly, I was seeing myself from behind. I was looking at my own body from something else's point of view. I could see my own shoulders, and resting on them were these dark, furry hands, almost like paws. In that vision, I was wearing some kind of robe or cloak, and whatever I was seeing through, it didn't seem human. It had pointed black ears, almost fox-like or canine. I know how unbelievable that sounds. I do, but that is exactly what I experienced. After that, things get blurry. I remember my brother, whose name is Mason, coming home not too long later, but I didn't say anything to him about what had happened. That night, we had to drive up the canyon to the ski resort where we both worked. It was some anniversary event, maybe the 80th or so, and I drove us there in his truck. The whole drive, I felt completely different, hyper-aware, like I could feel the flow of everything around me, the rhythm of the traffic, the movement of the cars ahead of us and behind us, like there was some invisible current connecting everything. But the strongest thing I felt was my brother's anxiety. And I swear, I had already felt it before he did that. I could sense it rising in him. When we got to the resort, I ended up in the employee lounge while people were coming and going. Some were off the clock and drunk already. Others were just on break. I sat in a corner, completely sober, still holding on to that same strange awareness. And then something else happened. I started seeing people in a way I can barely explain. I could still see the room normally, but layered over that, almost in my mind's eye, but with my eyes open too, I could see what looked like a glowing sun inside each person. Bright orange and yellow, burning, with little flares coming off of it. When two people talked, those flares would reach toward each other and interact. Then, when the energy between them stopped, a few seconds later, one of them would drift away or start talking to somebody else. I watched it happen over and over. After a while, I realized I could tell when an interaction was about to end before it actually did. I've thought about that moment so many times since then, and if I wasn't losing my mind, the only way I know how to describe it is that I felt like I was seeing something essential in people. Their core, their spirit maybe, something underneath the surface. I never had another experience that intense again. After that, it was mostly just waves of anxiety from time to time, like I had touched something I didn't know how to understand. It felt like I had opened a door and then lost the ability to make sense of what was on the other side. The last time I ever felt that same energy was much later, when I was at a fast casual restaurant with a friend. For some reason, I stopped one of the workers, a young woman behind the counter, and started talking to her. I honestly can't even remember what we talked about. It wasn't important. But while I was speaking to her, I felt this current between us, like a live wire. Not metaphorically, something tangible, almost visible in the corner of my mind. She looked stunned. Her eyes were wide, and she seemed distracted, almost frozen. She barely responded, like she was feeling something too, but couldn't quite process it. My friend was standing a few feet away, and the second I finished talking to her, he looked at me and said, "What was that?" He told me he could feel something between us too, strongly, and he had the same unsettled look in his eyes that she did. That's the one thing I've always come back to, because if it had only been me, I probably would have convinced myself it was all in my head. But the fact that someone else noticed something, really noticed it, has always stayed with me. So I still don't know what happened. I don't know whether it was spiritual, psychological, or something else entirely. I just know it felt real. And even now, years later, part of me still wonders what exactly I touched that day, and why it touched back. So when I was about 8 or 9, there was this little grocery store just down the street from my house called Willow Park Market. It had been there forever, and even as a kid, you could kind of feel that. It had this old, lived-in energy that made it feel charming during the day, and a little unsettling once you started thinking too hard about it. My family knew the owners really well. Back then, it was run by a couple named Kara and Brent. They'd fixed the place up and were incredibly kind to us. We were close enough that they'd sometimes let me come behind the counter or hang around in the back room while my mom chatted with them. One day, Kara told my mom and me that something strange had been happening in the store. I remember the way she said it too. She wasn't joking around. She looked genuinely rattled. She said she'd been hearing odd noises coming from the back room. Cupboards shutting by themselves, dishes falling for no clear reason, that kind of thing. Now, Brent didn't buy any of it. He thought there had to be a normal explanation, probably a draft, or the windows being open, or maybe the fan moving things around. But Kara was convinced it was something else. And me, being a kid who absolutely believed in ghosts, was equal parts terrified and fascinated. So she took me into the back room with her. We were only in there for a few minutes, and I still remember how quiet it felt right before it happened. Then suddenly, this big chalkboard that had been mounted to the wall came crashing straight down onto the floor. I screamed and ran out of there as fast as I could, just completely panicked. Kara came running out right behind me, and we told my mom and Brent what had happened. Both of us were really shaken. Even now, that moment is still so vivid in my mind. And sure, maybe there was a logical reason. Maybe the windows were open. Maybe something had come loose. But I still can't explain how a chalkboard that was fixed to the wall just dropped like that, right while we were standing there talking about weird things happening. It felt too perfectly timed to brush off. There was something else about that store that always got under my skin, too. They had this old black and white photo hanging up, from way back in the day, showing a group of people standing outside the shop. But right in the middle was this one girl who looked strangely blurred, almost like she didn't belong in the picture at all. Every time I looked at it, I got this weird little chill. And then years later, the whole thing got even eerier. The store changed hands and was renamed by the new owner. But not long after taking over, he passed away suddenly inside the shop. I don't know. Maybe none of it means anything. Maybe it's all coincidence, and my memory just wraps it in more mystery because I was a kid when it happened. But even now, when I think back on that little store, that falling chalkboard, and that blurry girl in the photograph, it still gives me chills. This happened to me close to 20 years ago, back when I was living out in a very remote part of eastern Montana. It's one of those memories that still bothers me, because even now, I can't make it fit into any normal explanation. It was a Saturday afternoon, a little after 4, when I suddenly remembered I had library books due that day. The library closed at 5, and where I lived, that was just enough of a problem to make me panic a little. If I took the highway, it was about 45 minutes, but there was a back road, a dirt road that cut through ranch land, and that could shave a few minutes off the drive. So I took the shortcut. I was driving a big SUV that belonged to the school where I worked, and I was moving pretty fast because I wanted enough time to return my books and maybe grab a couple more before the library shut down. That dirt road wasn't deserted, exactly. During the day, you'd usually pass at least a car or two. Not crowded by any means, but not completely empty either. At one point, I came around a bend in the road, and all at once, this scene appeared in front of me. On the right side of the road, there was a pickup truck parked at an odd angle, almost perpendicular to the road, up against a barbed wire fence. It looked like the front of the truck was pressed right into it. Beyond the fence, on the side where the cattle would have been, there was a man in a pale t-shirt and jeans, kneeling on the ground. He was sitting back on his heels, looking down at something in front of him. I could see him from the side as I approached, and what struck me immediately was that he didn't react at all. Not to my engine, not to my vehicle flying past. Nothing. Then, on the roadside of the fence, half hidden in what looked like tall grass, I saw another man lying on his back right next to the road. I couldn't make out all of him clearly, just enough to tell he was stretched out parallel to the road, with his head angled back toward the truck. One of his arms was raised, and he was waving it slowly. Not like someone cheerfully flagging a car down. More like someone dazed, weak, injured. The motion was jerky and faint. My immediate thought was that I'd just come upon some kind of accident. But the thing is, there was no obvious wreckage. No broken fence, no debris, no skid marks. I hadn't had to veer around the truck. Still, the man in the grass looked like he needed help, and for a moment I thought I should stop. The problem was, it all happened so suddenly. By the time my mind caught up with what I'd seen, I'd already driven past it. I couldn't see the scene anymore in my mirror, and I started trying to make sense of it as I kept going. I remember thinking, if that man was hurt badly enough to be lying there waving for help, why wasn't the other man doing anything? Why wasn't he standing, shouting, looking at me, signaling me down? Why was he just kneeling there, completely still? And if there had been an accident, where were the signs of it? What had even happened? I told myself I'd stop once I got to town and let the sheriff know. The sheriff's office happened to be in the same building as the library, so that seemed reasonable. But the more I thought about it on the drive, the less sense the whole thing made. I started second-guessing myself. I convinced myself that maybe another car would come along soon and check on them if something was really wrong. So I didn't report it. I went into the library, dropped off my books, picked out a few more, and by the time I left, it was just about closing time. The sun was down by then, and I had this awful, guilty feeling in my stomach. I did not want to go back down that dirt road in the dark and risk coming across that same scene again, so I took the highway home instead. And that's where it became genuinely unsettling. I drove the full length of that road, then turned around and drove it again. There was no sign of an accident anywhere. But more than that, there was no place along that road where a truck could have been parked between the road and the fence the way I had seen it. The fence ran very close to the roadside the whole way through. In most places, there wasn't room for a truck to sit there without blocking the road completely. And I know for a fact I had not needed to swerve around anything. Then I noticed something even stranger. There was no tall grass. Not anywhere. The roadside was all sparse, high desert scrub, low to the ground, patchy and dry. There was nothing even close to the kind of grass that could have hidden most of a grown man's body from view. If someone had been lying there, especially from my higher viewpoint in that SUV, I would have seen him clearly. But that isn't what I saw. I saw an arm rising above thick grass, slowly waving. And there shouldn't have been any grass there at all. That's the part I still can't get past. It wasn't just that the men were strange, or the truck was strange. It was the land itself, the fence line, the roadside, the vegetation. The whole scene looked wrong compared to what was actually there. So to this day, I don't know what I witnessed. I've run through every explanation I can think of. Maybe I misunderstood what I saw. Maybe stress or speed or the angle of the road played tricks on me. Maybe something stranger happened. I honestly don't know. But whatever it was, it has stayed with me all these years because I know I saw something that afternoon. I can still picture it clearly. And the worst part is, it was something that shouldn't have been there at all. I don't really know how to explain this without sounding completely unhinged, but I need to tell somebody exactly how it's been happening. The first week or two after I moved in, everything felt normal, quiet even. I actually remember thinking maybe this place was finally going to be peaceful. Then, not long after that, I started hearing footsteps at night. Not normal house noises either. I know what creaking pipes sound like. I know what settling wood sounds like. This was different. These were slow, uneven footsteps, like someone dragging one foot slightly behind the other, moving across the floor just outside my room. The first time I heard it, I was half asleep and tried to brush it off. But then it happened again the next night, and then again a few nights later. Now it's almost every night. It always starts late, usually well after midnight, when the whole house is dead quiet. I'll be lying there in bed, completely still, listening to this awful sound move somewhere in the hallway or the living room. I can never tell exactly where, just that it's inside. Definitely inside. And lately it's louder, closer, more deliberate. It used to be an occasional thing. Now it feels like it waits for me to settle down before it starts. I should probably say this because I know where people's minds go. I have OSDD and narcolepsy. I've dealt with both for years. I know what my own symptoms feel like. I know what sleep-related hallucinations are like, and this is not that. When I hear these footsteps, I'm awake. Fully awake. I can move, I can think, I can get up and check. And as for the OSDD, I know my own mind well enough to know when something is internal and when it isn't. None of this feels internal. If anything, the quiet in my own head has been the weirdest part. Usually there's always some mental noise, some sense that I'm not alone with my thoughts. But during all of this, it's like every part of me has gone dead silent. Like even my own mind is too scared to speak. Every time I hear the footsteps, I force myself to get up and look. I'll grab this heavy metal bar I keep beside the bed now, open my door as carefully as I can, and the second I do, the sound stops. Every single time. Just instant silence. Not even a final creak. It's like whatever was there knows I'm coming. Then I check everything. Every room, every closet, the bathroom, behind the shower curtain, under the bed, places that don't even make sense. Nothing. Doors locked, windows locked, no sign of anyone. But the second I step into that dark hallway, I feel it. I feel like I'm being watched. Not in a vague, anxious way. I mean so strongly that the back of my neck prickles and my throat tightens. Like something is standing just out of sight, waiting for me to notice. There's one detail that didn't bother me before, but it does now. My bedroom door has a deadbolt on the inside. Not a regular lock. A real deadbolt that only works from my side. When I first noticed it, I laughed about it with a friend. I made some dumb joke about the previous tenant being scared of monsters. Now I lock it every single night without fail, sometimes before the sun's even fully down. And even with that deadbolt, I still don't feel safe. And it's not only the noises. Things in the house have started changing places. At first, I doubted myself. I thought maybe I was groggy, maybe I'd set something down without thinking. But it keeps happening with things I'm obsessive about. My keys are the best example. I always hang them on the hook by the front door. Always. I'm weirdly strict with myself about it because I hate losing them. A couple weeks ago, I went to grab them and they were gone. I found them on the kitchen counter. I told myself maybe I'd been distracted. Then it happened again, except this time they were on the coffee table. I know I hung them up. I remember doing it. I live alone. There's nobody here to move them. A few days ago, I came home from lunch with my dad's side of the family and found one of my kitchen cabinets standing wide open. That might sound small, but I never leave cabinets open. Ever. It was drilled into me growing up to close everything properly, and it stuck. Seeing that cabinet open made my blood run cold in a way the footsteps somehow hadn't. Because suddenly, I wasn't just scared of the nights. I was scared that something had been here while I was gone. I searched the whole house with a kitchen knife in my hand, like that was going to do anything. Every room, every window, every lock, under furniture, behind doors. Nothing. No sign of forced entry. No broken latch. No open window. After that, I put up those cheap little alarms on the doors and windows. They haven't gone off once. Then there's the garage light. I don't even use the garage much. One evening, I put some yard tools away, turned off the light, locked the door, and that was that. The next day, my dad stopped by to drop off a hoodie I'd left at his place, and he casually mentioned that my garage light was on. I swear to you, I did not leave that light on. I know I didn't. And that one really got to me because there was no reason for that door to even be opened. I've also had weird issues with the smart bulbs in my bedroom, but I used to write that off as tech being glitchy. They'd sometimes come back on after disconnecting from the router. But lately, I keep thinking about how easy it would be for somebody to make it look like a glitch. Flip the switch off, then back on, and the light comes alive again like nothing happened. Once that thought got into my head, I haven't been able to shake it. That's the worst part of all this. It's escalating. It started as footsteps every now and then. Now it's footsteps almost nightly, tapping at my door, things being moved, cabinets left open, lights changing. It feels like something is getting bolder, like it's testing how far it can go. I can't shake the feeling that I'm being observed, especially at night. Not metaphorically, literally. Like there are eyes on me somewhere in the dark. I keep wishing I had a dog, just so I wouldn't feel like the only living thing in this house. I actually caught myself almost saying my dog had been acting strange, but I don't even have one. That's how fried my nerves are. I've started imagining the comfort of another heartbeat in the room. I haven't really told anyone in my actual life because what am I supposed to say? Hey, I think something is sneaking around my house at night, but every time I check, it disappears. People would either think I was losing it or blame my narcolepsy or dissociation. And I get why they would. But I know my own mind. I know what's mine and what isn't. This isn't me. I'm barely sleeping now. Maybe a couple hours a night if I'm lucky. I dread the silence after midnight because that's when I know I'll start listening for it. Every tiny sound makes my heart jump. Some nights, I sit in the corner of my bedroom with the deadbolt locked and that metal bar in my hands, just waiting. My own home feels less like a home and more like a trap. And once, just once, I could have sworn I heard someone whisper my name from another room. That only happened a single time, so maybe that one really was my fear getting to me. I don't know, but it scared me enough that I still think about it. What terrifies me most is that whatever this is, it doesn't feel random. It feels patient, like it's hiding on purpose, like it knows exactly how to stay just out of sight while letting me know it's there. Sometimes I get this awful feeling that it hasn't actually tried to hurt me because it doesn't need to yet. Like it's waiting. Like one day I'm going to turn around and finally see someone standing there. Or I'm going to wake up in the middle of the night and the footsteps won't stop at my bedroom door. I'm exhausted. I'm scared all the time. I left a bad situation to have a place of my own, and now I don't even feel safe here. I don't know whether I should call the police, set up the cameras, stay with someone else for a while, or just grab a bag and leave. I hate that it's come to this. I waited so long for a home that felt like mine. Now every night I lie awake wondering whether I'm going to make it to morning, or whether this thing, whatever it is eventually going to stop hiding. Ever since my dad passed away in 2018, I've carried this constant feeling of unease. It's hard to explain, but it's like the house never felt quite the same after that. The first time something happened that really shook me was about 2 years later. I was asleep in bed, and I woke up in the middle of the night, probably around 2 or 3 in the morning. That part wasn't unusual for me back then, because I used to wake up a lot and struggle to fall back asleep. So I just lay there, listening to the sounds outside and the normal little noises the house made. Our house is older, built back in the 80s, and the hardwood floors creak all the time. So at first I didn't think much of it when I heard cracking downstairs. But then it started to sound less like the floor settling and more like actual footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps, like someone was coming up the stairs. A little bit of context makes this worse. After my dad died, my mom started locking the door at the top of the staircase, the one that separates the stairs from the hallway where our bedrooms are. She said she just didn't feel as safe anymore. So I'm lying there, listening, and the sound comes all the way up the stairs and stops right at that door. I remember telling myself, okay, it's just the house. It's just the wood. But then I heard the doorknob, clear as day. It wasn't just a little rattle either. It sounded like someone was pressing it down and shaking it hard, like they were trying to get in. I froze, completely froze. I was still just a kid, and I didn't know what to do. My mom and my brother didn't wake up, which still confuses me, because to me it sounded so loud. I just shut my eyes and stayed as still as I could, hoping whatever it was would stop. The next morning, I told my mom, and she tried to brush it off. She said maybe it was just a letter going into the mailbox. But at 2 in the morning? That explanation never sat right with me. After that, things only seemed to get stranger, or maybe I just became more aware of them. Over the years, I started noticing all kinds of things that made me feel like I was never really alone in that house. Sometimes it felt like something brushed against my shoulder when no one was there. Once, both my brother and I heard a voice downstairs, even though my mom was outside in the garden. I'd get this sudden, heavy feeling of being watched. I'd hear footsteps when I was home alone. Our dog, Daisy, would stare at random corners of the room with her ears straight up like she was listening to something we couldn't hear. And then there were the little things that made it even harder to ignore. Objects would disappear and turn up in places none of us had put them. I'd catch movement out of the corner of my eye and turn, but nothing would be there. Sometimes a room would suddenly go ice cold, even though the windows were shut, and it was the middle of summer. I honestly don't know what's happening. I just know I'm exhausted by it. I'm at the point where I'm scared to move around the house by myself, and every time I try to tell someone, they act like I'm just imagining it because I watch too many scary videos. But I know what I felt. I know what I heard. And crazy or not, it was real to me. So there's this odd thing that happened to me when I was a kid, probably when I was about 9, sometime around 2009 or so. It wasn't exactly scary while it was happening, more just unsettling in a way I didn't understand until much later. Even now, I still catch myself thinking about it sometimes, trying to figure out what really happened. That summer, I was staying at my uncle's house out in a quiet rural area, far from the city. My parents were busy with work, and my uncle and his family had gone away for a couple of days, so I was by myself during the daytime. The house sat on a large piece of land with a fenced yard, and back then there weren't many neighboring houses nearby. It felt isolated, but not in a bad way, just peaceful. One thing I remember clearly is that the front gate was always kept locked, and it wasn't the kind you could just push open from inside. You needed a key from the outside, so nobody could really come and go easily. Because of that, we usually left the front door open during the day to let air in. It felt completely normal and safe. I was inside watching TV, probably cartoons, when I suddenly heard movement right near the front entrance. It sounded like footsteps or someone shifting around just outside the door. I got up right away because it caught me off guard. When I looked over, I saw a little girl standing just beyond the open doorway, right at the top step. She had pale blonde hair, almost golden in the sunlight, and she looked about my age, maybe a little younger. She was wearing simple, ordinary clothes, nothing unusual at all. I can't remember her face very well now, not in detail anyway, but I do remember how the sunlight fell across her and how calm she seemed. Not creepy, not threatening, just very quiet. I asked her who she was and what she was doing there. She told me she lived somewhere nearby, though she didn't say exactly where, and she never gave me her name. At the time, I didn't think much of that. I was a kid, so I just accepted it. I invited her inside. I said she could come watch TV with me or hang out for a bit, but she smiled politely and said no. We stood there talking for a few minutes anyway. I really wish I could remember the conversation word for word, but I can't. I only remember the feeling of it, how normal it seemed in the moment. Then, while we were standing there, this sudden gust of wind blew through the porch. There was a wind chime hanging above the door, and it started clinking loudly all at once. I remember both of us glancing up at it. That moment has stayed with me for some reason. It gave everything this strange, suspended feeling, like time paused for a second. After a little while, she told me she had to go. I said goodbye, and she walked off around the side of the house, heading in the direction of the gate. At first, I just watched her go. Then maybe 30 seconds later, it hit me. How was she supposed to leave? The gate was still locked. There wasn't any easy way in or out unless an adult opened it. So I ran after her, around the side of the house toward the back gate. She was gone. Not out on the road, not by the fence, nowhere in the yard. And the gate was still shut and locked, exactly the way it had been before. I remember just standing there, confused, trying to make it make sense. There really wasn't enough time for her to disappear the way she did. I still think about it now and then. I wonder why she showed up at all. I wonder why she wouldn't come inside, even though I invited her. And I wonder whether there was some simple explanation I just never saw, or whether it was one of those moments that isn't meant to make perfect sense. I'm not saying it was anything supernatural. Maybe there's a rational answer. But whatever it was, it felt real. And that's the part I've never been able to shake. I think it really began when I was around 8 years old. It was one of those long summer days that feels like it could last forever. I'd been outside with my parents from morning until evening, just running around, playing, doing all the little things that make a kid feel completely happy. Even back then, I was already attached to screens more than I should have been. But that day had been different. It felt full in a way I still can't quite explain. By the time night came, I was exhausted. I remember climbing into bed feeling that heavy kind of tired where you know you'll be asleep in minutes. I was lying there thinking about the day, about what we'd done, about my mom and dad, about nothing important and everything at once. And then, right as I was drifting off, I heard it. A horn. Not a car horn. One of those little squeeze bulb horns kids put on bikes. It made this odd, playful sound, kind of high and low at the same time. And it came twice. Same rhythm, back to back. At first, I didn't think much of it. Across from our house, there was a small corner shop, and in the evenings, there were usually still people out there talking, kids riding around, that sort of thing. So I told myself it was probably just some kid fooling around on a bike. I rolled over and went to sleep. A few nights later, it happened again. I was in bed, almost asleep, and this time it was quieter outside. The shop had already closed, and the only sounds left were the occasional cars passing on the main road. I used to sleep with a stuffed bear tucked up near my face, and I remember pressing it against one ear to block out the traffic a little. I was right on the edge of sleep when I heard it again. 2 honks. Same sound, same spacing. That was the first moment it really felt strange to me. I remember thinking, okay, maybe this is just some family out for an evening walk. Maybe there's a child nearby who always presses that horn at the same spot. It sounded reasonable enough. Still, something about it stayed with me. I started paying attention after that, quietly waiting to see if it would happen again. And then after I turned 10, it became impossible to ignore. One night I was supposed to be in bed early because school was starting again the next day. Instead, I was up later than I should have been, sitting there on my tablet playing a game for way too long. I was tired, my eyes were heavy, and I was just about to shut everything off and go to bed when I heard it again. Twice. Exactly twice. Same pace, same sound. Like someone had replayed the same little audio clip outside my window. This time, I got up right away. I went to the window and looked out. There was nobody there. No kids, no bikes, no people walking. Not even a passing car. The street was still. Completely still. I remember standing there feeling this cold wave go through me. Not panic exactly, just that weird, hollow feeling you get when something doesn't make sense and you know it should. But I was so tired that after a minute, I just got back into bed and tried not to think about it. The strange thing is, it didn't stop. Eventually, I got used to it. With the windows shut, it wasn't loud enough to be unbearable, especially once the shutters were down. But I could always hear it, clear enough to recognize instantly. And after a while, I stopped being scared of it. I even started joking with myself about it. There were nights when I'd hear those 2 little honks and just smile, like some invisible neighbor was stopping by to say goodnight. As odd as it sounds, it became familiar. Then things changed last year. A tenant who had lived in the apartment above us moved out. Not long after, he passed away very suddenly. A new tenant moved in after that, and somehow, around the same time, the pattern changed too. I still heard the horn now and then, but one evening it happened differently. It honked 3 times. I remember freezing when I heard it, because for all those years it had always been 2. Never 1, never 3, always 2. And after that night, it started fading away. Less often, then barely at all. And now, it's been months since I last heard it. I honestly don't know what it was. I don't know if it had anything to do with the house, the people who lived in it, some strange coincidence, or just someone playing a long, bizarre joke without ever knowing I was listening. I can't explain it. I've tried to, but I still can't. What surprises me most is that I kind of miss it. That sound was part of my nights for nearly 10 years. I'm 18 now, and for so long it was just there, like this tiny mystery that belonged only to me. I never really told anyone because I thought they'd laugh or say it was just my imagination. But I know what I heard, over and over again, for years. And even now, sometimes late at night, I still catch myself listening for it, just in case it comes back. I've carried this memory with me for most of my life, and even now, when I tell it, it still gives me chills. This happened during the 1988 to 1989 school year, when I was in 3rd grade. I was about 8 years old, and I was staying after school for an art class at my elementary school. We were set up in the cafeteria, and at one point I left to go to the bathroom by myself. As I was walking down the hall and turning the corner, I suddenly got that unmistakable feeling that someone was watching me. You know that feeling when the air changes and your whole body picks up on something before your mind does? It was like that. So I turned to look. Standing in the doorway of a classroom near ours was this figure that just did not look human. It was short, maybe around 4 feet tall, very thin, with these unusually long arms and legs. Its head looked much too large for its body, kind of oval-shaped, almost like an egg. The whole silhouette was wrong somehow. Even at that age, I could tell the proportions were off. It wasn't just a small person or another kid. It looked completely unfamiliar. And I was not an easily frightened child. I was actually pretty bold when I was on my own. But the second I saw that figure, I felt terrified in a way I had never felt before. Not just startled, deeply, instinctively scared. Everything about it felt wrong. I ran straight into the bathroom. What's strange is, after that, my memory gets blurry. I assume I used the bathroom because when I came back, I didn't need to go anymore, and I definitely wasn't the kind of kid who would have had an accident. But I honestly can't remember what happened while I was in there. And even stranger, I don't clearly remember how I made it back to the cafeteria. I do remember being scared, and I remember peeking out carefully to see whether that thing was still there. It wasn't. Then I ran back and told the other kids and adults what I'd seen. Somebody there started talking about aliens, and one of the other kids even sketched a picture of what I described. That was the first time I ever heard about the classic gray alien look. Before that day, I had never seen anything like it. I was a little kid in the late 80s, and my idea of aliens was the silly cartoon kind, green, goofy, not at all like what I saw in that hallway. That's one of the reasons this has stayed with me. People usually react in one of 2 ways when I tell the story. Either they say I must have imagined it, maybe from something I saw on TV, or they go all the way in the other direction and say I must have been abducted and had my memory erased. Honestly, I can't prove either one. All I know is this. I saw something that day, and it was unlike anything I had ever seen before. I also don't believe I lost a huge amount of time. I remember enough to feel pretty certain I wasn't gone very long, even if some parts of that moment are fuzzy now. And over the years, I've never had another experience like it. No UFO sightings, No other encounters, nothing else that would make me think there was some larger pattern. It was just this one moment. One impossible, unsettling moment from childhood that I still can't fully explain. And maybe that's the part that stays with me most. The fact that after all these years, I still don't know what I saw standing there in that doorway. When I was little, for years I went back and forth wondering whether I was seeing spirits or whether something was wrong with me. Even now I still do. But there are a few parts of what happened that have always stayed with me, and they're the reason I can't fully brush it off. I think it started when I was about 6. My family and another family we were close to had gone out together for dinner, and after we ate, the adults wanted to stay longer and have a few more drinks. So they let us kids go sit in this grassy area across the road. It was a tiny town we knew well, and we'd already had the usual talks about being careful. That grassy patch sat beside the train tracks, mostly fenced off except for the crossing area. We were sitting on a bench, waiting for a train to pass because we could hear one coming and wanted to watch. Right after the train thundered by, I saw a little girl standing near the tracks. She looked around my age, maybe 6 or 7. I remember just staring at her, assuming she was another kid from town. I looked away for a second, and when I looked back, she was gone. A few days later, I saw her again. This time it was at school, nowhere near the tracks. After that, I started noticing her all over town. Then I started seeing her at home too, even though we lived a good 15 minutes away. Eventually, she started talking to me, and I talked back. Everyone around me just assumed she was an imaginary friend. Her name was something like Tessa, or maybe Tara. I'm not fully sure anymore. I just remember it started with a T. She seemed about my age, but when I asked how old she was, she didn't really know. So in my head, I just made her the same age as me. Over time, she told me how she died. She said her family had been waiting for a train at the old station near that grassy area, the one that later became a museum. She and her sister, maybe a twin, had been playing because they got there early. I remember her telling me they were running too close to the tracks and didn't understand how dangerous trains really were. Then she got hit. The way she described it was awful. Far too awful for a child to make up so clearly. For a long time, that detail haunted me. It also explained why she was always so upset whenever I got anywhere near the tracks. At some point, I told my dad what she had said about dying. I don't even remember how it came up. I just remember the mood changing instantly. He went quiet and distant, and after that, I stopped talking about her so openly. When I was in 2nd grade, I was having a rough time at school. I was getting picked on, and sometimes my teacher would let me stay inside during breaks. One day I was in the classroom with her, drawing on the whiteboard. By then, I still didn't really understand what an imaginary friend was supposed to be. So when the girl drew something on the board and my teacher turned and asked what it was, I told her, honestly, that my friend had drawn it. Years later, I found out my parents hadn't moved me to another school just because of the bullying. That was only part of the story. My teacher had told them she thought I might be schizophrenic. I stopped seeing the girl after a while. Or maybe I just stopped noticing her. But I remember hearing her voice again in 8th grade, during a time when I really wasn't doing well mentally. And that shook me more than I like to admit. That wasn't the only experience I had, just the one I remember most clearly. Another time, when I was around 9 or 10, we were on a school excursion, walking along a path near the beach. By then, I'd gotten used to ignoring people I thought maybe no one else could see. I'd learned not to stare. But I must have looked too long at this one man, because he suddenly started walking beside me. My friend on my other side didn't react at all, which told me everything I needed to know. So I ignored him, but he kept talking. He told me that back in, I think, July 1994, he and a few friends had gone out fishing even though a storm was rolling in. They didn't think it would get as bad as it did. None of them made it back. I still remember the flat, matter-of-fact way he said it. After that, I went through this strange phase where I became fixated on drowning. Honestly, I've always had this heavy curiosity about death, and that experience only made it stronger. When I got home, I asked my sister to look it up. I didn't tell her why. I just said I'd overheard someone talking about it. And it turned out there really had been an accident like that. Several men had died out on the water in a storm. From what I found, it also sounded like it wasn't the first time they'd taken risks like that. People around them apparently thought something like this would happen eventually. Those are the two main experiences that have stayed with me most vividly, but they weren't the only ones. I definitely remember seeing people no one else seemed to notice. My mom, my older sister, and my older brother all remember me doing that too. I've never asked my dad if he remembers the day I told him about the girl by the tracks. We only started getting close again in the past few years, and I've never wanted to risk damaging that by bringing it up. One other thing that always made me pause is that my mom went through something similar when she was a child. She told me that my grandmother had said things about it too. I never got to know much about my grandmother because she died when I was very young, but I do know this. Both my mom and I were second daughters in our families. Maybe that means nothing. Maybe it's coincidence. Or maybe it's some strange thread running through generations. I honestly still don't know what to believe. Maybe I was just a deeply troubled kid with an overactive mind. Maybe I was picking up stories I shouldn't have known. Or maybe, for a little while, people who were gone still found ways to be seen. I can't prove any of it. I just know that when I think about that little girl by the rails, it still doesn't feel imaginary. You know, I keep thinking about this dream I had back in 2021. And even now it gives me chills. In the dream, I was in my aunt's apartment building in the city where I went to college. I was standing there, holding the elevator door open while helping my mom carry up a bunch of empty boxes, the kind you bring when a place is about to be packed away. Somehow, even in the dream, I understood exactly what that meant. My aunt was selling the apartment. I remember what I was wearing too, which is such a strange detail to hold on to. I had on this bright pink t-shirt, and in my arms, I was carrying way too much stuff. There was my mom's dark jacket, a couple of my own backpacks, my sister's canvas shoulder bag, and a plastic grocery bag with a bottle of cola, some water, and a loaf of bread. It was all so ordinary, so specific, the way real life always is. What stayed with me most was the feeling of it. I can still picture my mom and my sister trying to clear everything out of the elevator quickly so we would not keep it occupied. Then I remember closing the apartment door and talking about how we did not want to say goodbye to that place. And at the same time, there was this tiny little hope in me, this wish that maybe I would see the apartment again one day, even though deep down I already knew that hope was probably not real. Then I woke up. And when I woke up, I felt awful, truly awful. I was horrified, stressed, and then suddenly so relieved when I realized it had only been a dream and that my aunt's apartment was still ours, still part of the family. Later that day, I sat with my aunt for afternoon coffee in her room at our house. At the time, she had been commuting between cities for years, and during the lockdown period, she stayed with us a lot, so that routine felt very normal. I told her about the dream almost jokingly, trying to make light of it. I even remember laughing about how, in the dream, I did not have one of those mask elastics around my wrist like I always used to back then. I said maybe in the dream COVID had already ended, or maybe I had somehow wandered into some parallel version of my own life. My aunt gave that dry little laugh of hers and said she really hoped she would never have to sell the apartment because of the family's financial situation. We all brushed it off. We told each other that, no, that would not happen. Everything would be fine. And then April 2025 came. At the beginning of that month, my aunt told the whole family she was going to sell the apartment and try to buy a place in our hometown instead. We were stunned, completely stunned. It felt like the floor disappeared under us. From that moment on, all of us tried to help however we could. Emotionally, because she was heartbroken, and we knew we had to be especially gentle with her. Physically too, because moving is something my family knows far too well. I have moved so many times in my life that I almost stopped counting properly. By the time I was 18, I had already lived in around 8 different homes. My family has always been in motion, across cities, across countries, across stages of life. So when something like this happens, everyone just instinctively starts lifting, sorting, packing, carrying. Still, knowing how to move does not make it hurt less. That whole month was heavy, stressful, emotional. Every conversation seemed to carry this sadness underneath it. And then, on April 27th, 2025, at 7 in the evening, my aunt sold the apartment. Just like that. It was done. Then came May 10th, 2025. We went back to the apartment one last time for the weekend. The plan was practical enough, just to pick up some boxes my aunt had left there, see a few family friends, and spend a little time in the city. But the second I was there, helping my mom, the dream came flooding back. And that was the moment it happened. The dream became real. Not in some vague, symbolic way. Not in a fuzzy déjà vu way where you wonder if you are imagining it. No, it was real in the sharpest, most personal sense. I was there, doing almost exactly what I had seen years before, carrying things, helping my mum, standing inside the goodbye I had once only dreamed. It scared me so much, it genuinely freaked me out. I ended up having a small panic attack because I just could not emotionally separate the dream from the reality anymore. It felt like something I had desperately hoped would never come true had arrived anyway. And the strange thing is, this is not even the first time something like that has happened to me. I have had dreams line up with real life before, but usually it is small things, tiny moments, meeting someone, wearing a certain outfit, saying a sentence exactly the way I dreamed it, sitting in a conversation, eating a specific food, hearing a song somewhere, seeing something on television. Little things, the kind of things you can almost shrug off. But this was different. This was deeply personal. This was tied to a place I have known my whole life, a place filled with memory, comfort, family, history. I know there is a name for this feeling, for when a dream seems to replay itself in real life. But even having a name for it does not make it easier. Because the truth is, I did not want this one to come true. I really did not. I do not want to say goodbye to that apartment. I have known it for as long as I can remember. Some places stop being just walls and rooms. They become part of your emotional landscape, part of how you remember your own life. And losing a place like that feels a little like losing a version of yourself too. So yes, that dream came back to me. And this time, it was real. And I am still trying to make peace with that. I need to tell you what happened a few mornings ago, because honestly, I still can't make sense of it. I woke up a little before dawn, up on the top bunk like always. and the second I opened my eyes, I knew something was wrong. There was something standing in the room with me. At first, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me in the dark, but the longer I looked, the more real it felt. It had this human shape, but it was way too tall and unnaturally thin. Its body looked stretched out, almost bent in places that didn't seem right. I couldn't see every detail clearly, and that's part of what scared me most. It was like my eyes just wouldn't settle on it. Like whatever it was, my mind didn't want to fully process it. Its head was tilted down, almost like it was staring at the floor, but it was so tall that the top of it nearly brushed the ceiling. And no, before anyone says it, I was not dreaming. I was awake. I could move my arms, shift my legs, and speak just fine. I even called out for my mom right away. That's one of the strangest parts. She always wakes up easily, even if someone just whispers her name. But this time, she didn't respond at all. I knew she was in the room because I could hear her breathing heavily in her sleep. Still, when I called for her, nothing. It was like my voice just disappeared. There's another detail that keeps bothering me. Above our bedroom door, we've had this little cross hanging there for as long as I can remember. It's been in the exact same spot for years. But the night before all this happened, it fell. Just dropped out of nowhere. I remember thinking it was odd at the time, but now it feels different. Like maybe it meant something. The thing in the room sounded like it was breathing hard. Not normal breathing either. It was rough and uneven, almost like panting. That sound stayed with me more than anything. I lay there frozen for a few seconds, just listening to it, trying to understand what I was seeing. Then suddenly, I must have blacked out or drifted off, because the next thing I remember, I woke up soaked in sweat and gasping for air. Since then, I haven't felt right. It's like this constant pressure in the back of my mind, like someone is nearby, just out of sight, watching me. I keep telling myself maybe I'm just shaken up. Maybe I'm feeding my own fear. But then something else happened today. There's a window directly across from my bed, and it faces the house next door. Some of their windows line up almost perfectly with ours. Earlier today, I glanced out and saw a shape in one of them. Tall, hunched, still, and I swear to you, it looked like the same figure. The moment I noticed it, it didn't duck away to the side like a person normally would. It just slowly pulled backward into the darkness, like it was being swallowed by it. That's the only way I can describe it. It didn't run. It didn't turn. It just receded, smooth and unnatural, until it was gone. I really don't know how I'm supposed to sleep tonight after that. I thought maybe saying this out loud, telling someone exactly what I saw, might make... Hello, Paranormal M channel friends. Where are you watching from right now? Drop a comment below and let me know. How's everyone doing? Thanks so much for sharing your paranormal experiences with us. We truly appreciate it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so we can listen to even more stories together. Now, grab your headphones, switch on your nightlight, and let's get started. Good night. So I was maybe 5 or 6 when this happened. One of those memories that stuck to me like a burr, even though I still can't fully explain it. It was really early in the morning, still that bluish, half-awake kind of light, and my older half-sister, Marisol, and I were already up. We were excited because we were about to leave for a family trip down to Alabama to visit relatives. It was a big deal to me. Those trips felt like an event, like the whole year led up to them. And that year felt extra special because Marisol was coming with us. Usually, she spent most of her summers with her dad, so she didn't always get to be part of the trip. But this time she was going, and we were both buzzing about it, talking too fast, bouncing from one thought to another. Just that kid energy where sleep doesn't matter if something fun is about to happen. At some point, Marisol started talking about her grandmother who had died not long before. She called her Lala, and I remember the way her voice got a little quieter when she mentioned her, like she was thinking hard. She said something like, "Do you think she's still around? Like, watching out for me?" Then Marisol got this idea, almost playful, like it was a game. She looked at the wall over her bed and called out, kind of softly but also kind of daring the universe. She said something like, "If you're here, show me. Make a shadow." And I swear to you, almost right after that, we saw it. On the wall above her bed, a shadow appeared that looked like a head. Not a whole person, just a head shape. Dark and clear enough that it made both of us freeze. My stomach did that weird drop feeling because even though we were curious, we did not expect anything to actually happen. We just stared. I remember my heart thudding so loud it felt like it filled the room. And then, a few seconds later, it got even stranger. On the far left side of the same wall, another shadow showed up. This one shaped like a full person. But it wasn't the same kind of dark. It had this lighter, warm tint to it, like it was mixed with the sunrise coming through the window, almost amber. And it moved. Not like someone walking normally either. The best way I can describe it is like a slow, exaggerated running pose. Arms bent, legs stretched like mid-stride, like a person caught in a dramatic jog, but looping through the motion at a weird, unhurried pace. Marisol and I just watched it, completely silent, like if we spoke too loud it would notice us. And then it was gone. Just gone. Like someone switched it off. That's when I broke. I started crying, full-on, little kid terrified crying. And Marisol immediately got serious, like she regretted the whole idea. She turned toward the wall and said, "Okay, stop. You're scaring her. Please stop." And after she said that, nothing else happened. No more shadows, no movement. Just the wall, the morning light, the two of us breathing too fast. I've told people about this before, and the most common explanation I hear is, maybe it was a dream. And I get why people say that. I really do. But here's the thing. This memory has always felt like a normal memory, like the same category as remembering the smell of a room or the pattern on a blanket. And I had plenty of nightmares as a kid, and I remember those as nightmares. They had that specific, surreal, wrong texture that dreams have. I asked Marisol about it years later, and she said she didn't remember it happening at all. But then she explained she doesn't remember a lot of her childhood because she was going through a really hard time back then and blocked out huge chunks of it. What did make my skin prickle a little was that she also said, "Honestly, that sounds like something I would have done." Like calling out to someone who passed away and asking for a sign. She's always been the type to poke at paranormal stuff just to see what happens, like it's fascinating to her, like experimenting. And me? I've always been the skeptical one. I want a reasonable explanation. I've tried to pick it apart from every angle. Light from the window, something outside moving, our eyes playing tricks, kid imagination, dream logic bleeding into waking life. But what I keep circling back to is the physical setup. Marisol was sitting right there on the bed, and the first shadow, the head, showed up above her. Then the full body shadow appeared way off to the other side of the wall, and I could see Marisol the entire time. She wasn't doing anything that could have caused that. So I'm left with this one stubborn little moment from childhood that doesn't neatly fit in any box. And I think that's why it still sticks with me. Not because I'm convinced it was a ghost, but because it was the first time I remember feeling like the world might be bigger and stranger than the explanations I like to lean on. So here's where I'm at right now. I'm in this weird in-between season of my life. I'm selling my place, getting ready to move halfway across the country for work, and until everything lines up, I'm staying with my dad, back in my childhood home. And I need you to understand something about this house right away. My dad is basically the only person who has lived here for any real stretch of time and not had something happen. It's almost funny, if it wasn't so unsettling. Like the house just decided, nah, you're fine, and saved all its weirdness for everyone else. Because other people? People who don't know each other? People who've never compared notes? They've described the same thing without being prompted. More than once, different visitors have mentioned seeing a woman standing in the kitchen. Same general look, same presence, same spot. Except, there's no woman. There's never been a woman. My brother Miles, who is aggressively skeptical, like the kind of guy who would argue with a candle about whether it's allowed to flicker, had something come flying out of the kitchen one night. Not a shadow, not a draft, something with weight. It slammed into him hard enough to throw him off balance, and then it just vanished into the dining room like it was late for an appointment. My mom had her own run-ins when she lived here. She swore she saw objects physically moving on their own. And there's this one story she told me that I still can't quite shake. Right after she gave birth to me, she was on medication, and the pills kept disappearing. Just gone. Over and over. No explanation. Then one morning, she woke up and watched it happen in real time. She saw one pill on the bedside table stand up on its side, like someone pinched it and lifted it, and it rolled. Except it didn't roll normally. It rolled off the edge, changed direction like it had a mind of its own, and went underneath the table. So she got down on the floor and looked, and under there, like some sick little stash, was a whole cache of the medication that had been missing, all tucked away like something had been collecting it. And my own experiences, mine were the kind that don't feel like a campfire story. They felt sinister. Like the house wasn't just haunted, it was hostile. Sure, it had all the usual stuff. Creaks when nothing should shift. Soft murmurs you couldn't make out. That sense of being watched that makes your skin go tight. But the clearest thing, the one that's burned into me, happened when I was 10. I remember it with this awful clarity. I was climbing into bed. One leg was already on the mattress, and the other was still on the floor. And as I was shifting my weight, I felt a hand wrap around the ankle of the leg that was still down. A hand. Not pressure. Not fabric snagging. Fingers. I remember the details in a way that makes me nauseous even now. I could feel individual fingers. I could feel the joints, which made me think it was a thin hand, bony almost. I felt the nails, and it was ice cold, like it had been sitting in snow. And then it started pulling. Not tugging, pulling with intention. My body began sliding under the bed, and I'm telling you, there is no version of that moment where I did it to myself. The position I was in, one leg up, one leg down, there's no leverage to drag yourself backward like that. But I moved anyway. I felt my thighs stretching into this painful, forced half-split, like my muscles were going to tear. I slid at least a couple feet underneath the bed before it suddenly stopped. Just stopped, like someone let go. So when I say this house has something wrong with it, I don't mean it in a maybe it's spooky way. I mean there's something off here that even the most committed non-believer can't easily shrug away. It's not just events either, it's the atmosphere. The second you step inside, it's like the air thickens, like the place has this dampening effect on everything, sound, mood, even light. And that sounds dramatic, but I swear it's real. You can open every shade, every curtain, flood the windows with sunshine, and somehow the house still looks gray. Like the brightness hits the rooms and just gets buffered. The corners never fully brighten. The light feels tired before it reaches the walls, and it drains you. That's the part that feels the most consistent. I can be inside for 10 minutes and feel like I've run out of battery, like my thoughts slow down and my body gets heavy, and all I want is to leave. The strangest part is, I've never even felt like it's a ghost exactly. It doesn't feel human. It doesn't feel like a person lingering. It feels more like a bad pocket of something. Like the house is sitting on a nasty current, or it's acting like some kind of funnel. Like a place where the air and the energy and the mood all get pulled downward. And right now, it's quiet. Dormant, almost. Nothing dramatic is happening, but the pressure is still there, like something holding its breath in the walls. And that's why I'm torn. Because a big part of me wants to do something, anything, to push back against it. To make the place feel lighter while I'm stuck here. But there's this fear in the back of my mind that if I start trying to clear it, I'll just wake it up. Like I'll poke whatever this is and remind it I'm here. So I'm living in this uneasy balance, trying not to provoke it, trying not to think about it too much, while also feeling it sitting over my shoulder the entire time, like a storm that hasn't decided whether to break yet. So, I want to take you back to a night that should have been completely normal. I went to bed like always, nothing on my mind, nothing weird in the air. And then I woke up in the middle of the night. It was 3:07 a.m. exactly. And the thing is, that time didn't just happen once. It started becoming my time. Like my body was being yanked awake on purpose. At first, I only remember opening my eyes a crack and hearing something right next to me. Not across the room. Next to me. Little sounds, like someone was carefully moving things around. And I swear to you, fear hit me so fast I felt sick. I squeezed my eyes shut so hard my face hurt, because in my head I was like, if I look, I'm going to see something I can't unsee. And then, this is the part that still makes my stomach flip. It started knocking things off my nightstand. Not all at once, one by one, like it was trying to show me it had control. I just lay there frozen, listening to the little thuds, listening to a steady tapping, and feeling this heavy, awful presence like something was hovering right over me. I didn't sleep at all. When the sun finally came up, I shot out of bed, turned on every light I could reach, and ran straight to my sibling, my brother, Eli. I told him something happened. I didn't tell him everything, though. I was honestly scared that if I described it too clearly, it would, I don't know, get angrier, like it was listening. And after that, it didn't stop. Every night there was tapping on the wall. Sometimes it sounded like fingernails. Sometimes like someone drumming slowly just to mess with me. Papers would rustle in my room even when nothing should have been moving. I'd lie there trying to convince myself it was air or the house settling. But it never felt like that. It felt intentional, like a message. I'm still here. One night, I dragged in this old lamp we had sitting around, one of those tall ones that had been shoved into a corner for ages. I didn't even care if it looked weird in my room. I just wanted light. I wanted something comforting. But my dad, Ray, saw it and got irritated in this cold, sharp way that didn't match the moment at all. He muttered something about me being dramatic and acting scared of the dark. And then, no warning, he snapped the lamp. Just used his knee and broke it like it was nothing. I remember standing there stunned, not even knowing what to say. It wasn't just that the lamp was broken. It was the feeling of being trapped. Like the one thing I did to make myself feel safer got taken away in seconds. So I went back to waking up at 3:07. Back to the scratching sounds. Back to the tapping. back to feeling like something was right behind me even when I refused to turn around. And then it got worse, because it started finding ways to reach me outside my room. I know I was in 6th grade when this happened, because I remember writing about it in this little notebook I carried everywhere. I wrote everything down like I was trying to prove to myself I wasn't imagining it. One day I went to grab that notebook from my backpack at school. It was gone. And I mean gone. Not misplaced, not maybe I left it on my desk. It wasn't there, and I remember my hands shaking while I dug through my bag like a maniac. Later that day, my friend Marisol messaged me. She said, is this yours? And she sent me a picture, a photo of my notebook page, the page I'd written in. I just stared at it, because I didn't understand how it was even possible. I hadn't shown it to anyone. I hadn't sent it. And yet, somehow, she had it on her phone. After that, it started testing me. Like it would drop little details into messages that were too specific to be coincidence. Things I'd thought privately. Things that happened during my day that nobody else would know. It felt like it had eyes on my life, not just my room. And the creepiest part is, I started responding. Not because I wanted to, but because I was desperate to understand what was happening. I'd type in Marisol's chat like I was talking into the dark, and then she'd get replies that didn't sound like her at all. Short, taunting, knowing. I still feel guilty about that sometimes, because she must have thought I'd completely lost it. And then, because apparently it wasn't enough, it followed me into the stupidest place imaginable. A game. I was obsessed with Roblox back then. It was my escape, my little safe world. Until an account showed up that looked almost exactly like mine. Same name, same style. Just one tiny change. An extra letter at the end. Like a copycat shadow. And it messaged me. Just seeing that username pop up made my heart drop, because it felt like it was saying, "You can't get away from me. Not even here." And that wall tapping? That wasn't just sound. There are still marks. I'm not exaggerating. There are faint scratch lines on the wall that never fully disappeared, like something dragged across it over and over. Proof I didn't just dream it. It also loved moving my stuff. I'd leave something on my dresser, like a bracelet or a hair clip, and later it would be somewhere else. Not just slightly shifted, like fully relocated. And it didn't only mess with me. One day my parents were trying to leave the house, and their keys vanished. They tore the place apart. My mom was frustrated. My dad was snapping at everyone. And then suddenly the keys were sitting right on the kitchen table. Not hidden, not tucked behind something. Just there. They immediately blamed me. They were like, "Did you do this because you don't want to go?" And I remember standing there with my face burning because I knew it wasn't me. But there was no way to explain without sounding insane. Eventually, little by little, things started fading. Not overnight, more like the volume turning down slowly. The nights weren't as loud. The tapping wasn't constant. And honestly, the first real shift happened when my mom bought me a nightlight. She'd noticed I'd been sleeping with my room light on, and she didn't shame me for it. She didn't get angry. She just tried to help. It was a simple thing, but it made me feel less alone in the dark. And somehow, whether it was coincidence or not, everything started cooling off after that. But even when it got quieter, the fear didn't disappear right away. I was so used to feeling watched that even taking a shower felt like stepping onto a stage. Like I'd glance at the curtain expecting something to be there, even though I knew logically it shouldn't. And the hardest part is, it's not easy to explain this to anyone without them immediately deciding what it was. All I know is how it felt. It felt real. It felt personal. And for a long time, it felt like something had its attention locked on me, and it wanted me to know it. I need to tell you about this place I keep going to when I'm asleep, because it's not just a dream at this point. It's been years, like years. And every time I end up there, it feels like I've been dropped back into a world that already remembers me. So, I've had disturbing dreams for a long time, since I was a teenager. I'm in my mid-20s now, and they still come. They're always intense, like I'm living someone else's life for the night, and they almost always involve drugs showing up somehow, and me getting dragged into these situations where I'm one wrong move away from dying. And there's always this same man. I'll call him Elias, because that's not his real name. Honestly, I don't even know if he has a real name, but he has this familiar face that never changes. He first started showing up when I was about 16, and he's still there now, like he's been waiting at the edge of my life the whole time. He doesn't act like a villain. It's the opposite. He's warning me every time. Sometimes he appears in the basement of this massive hotel, like he's just standing there in the dim light, calm as anything, while my stomach is doing flips. Other times he's sitting on a bench outside some corner store I've been to 100 times in that dream city. And when he talks, it's not dramatic, it's almost tired, like he's said the same line too many times. Don't go that way. Don't take anything from them. Not tonight. And I hate how much I trust him, because I don't even understand why I do. The city itself, it's hard to explain without sounding ridiculous. It feels post-apocalyptic, but not in the movie way. More like the world ended politely. Like people kept going after something broke and never got repaired. The streets are familiar but wrong. The sky always looks kind of bruised, and there's this constant sense that something terrible is happening just out of sight. Sometimes I'm walking on the outer edge of it, like the city thins out into nothing. I'll be barefoot, always barefoot, and I won't know where I'm going, just stumbling along broken pavement, trying to pretend it's normal. And then I end up at this house. It looks ordinary at first, just a house in the middle of nowhere, like it got placed there by accident. But once you're inside, it's impossible. It has more rooms than it should, doors where there weren't doors before, hallways that feel like they rearrange when you're not looking. There are hidden tunnels, little service corridors, and this part makes me sound insane. There's even a restaurant inside it that I keep going to, like it's my comfort spot. But I don't actually feel safe there, because bad things have happened there. In one dream, I was kidnapped from that house, pulled away so fast I didn't even get to scream. In another, I was lying in what I thought was my room, and someone just walked in through a doorway that didn't exist the last time I looked, like the house had made a new entrance for them. And the owners, this elderly couple, I'll call them Marion and Howard, they're always off. Sometimes they're sweet, overly welcoming, like they're proud I came back. Sometimes they vanish completely, like the house is running itself. And for some reason, the place is constantly hosting events, like ghost tours, people with flashlights and pamphlets walking through my nightmare house like it's entertainment. But the scariest place in the whole city isn't the house. It's the waiting room. There are always people there, a lot of them, and nobody looks okay. Some of them look sick in a way that makes you think, you shouldn't be alive. Some look like they've already died and are just still sitting. They're impatient, restless, angry, like they've been waiting for something that never happens, and no one ever gets called back. Ever. There's an upstairs area too, like a balcony hallway that overlooks the first floor. And every time I'm there, I'm terrified of what's on the second level. It's not one specific thing. It's the feeling. Like the air is contaminated. Like if I go up there, I'll be seen. In some dreams, there are vicious dogs, huge, tense, ready to tear into anything that moves. In other dreams, it's people with guns, posted in corners like they're guarding something. It's always different details, but it's the same message. You shouldn't be here. One time, though, I didn't just run through it. I watched something. There was a guy visiting someone who was already in that place, like he'd made it past the waiting room somehow. I couldn't hear their full conversation, like the dream muted it, but I saw them crying, both of them. The kind of crying that's ugly and honest and doesn't stop. And I remember standing there frozen, unable to intervene, and then realizing I was crying too. Like my body was responding to grief I didn't even understand. That's what messes with me. It's not just fear. It's emotion that feels borrowed. And then there's the hotel. The hotel is a whole thing. It's massive, like it goes on forever. I'm always there at midnight, always trying to get somewhere, always feeling like I'm being watched. One of the floors is off limits, and the hallway to it smells like mold and wet carpet and something worse underneath. Like rot, like history. And the strangest part is there's always food there. Trays, carts, staff walking around, but it's impossible to actually get anything. Every time I try, something blocks me. A door locks. A person turns away. A hallway becomes the wrong hallway. It's like the hotel is teasing me with normal life, but won't let me touch it. And in this city, people are constantly offering me drugs. Like it's as casual as offering gum. Someone will press something into my hand and I'll assume it's weed, or mushrooms, or something that makes sense. And then I look down and realize it's these weird black pills. Too dark, too smooth, almost unnatural. And everyone else takes them like it's nothing, like it's just part of being there. But when I take them, it always goes wrong. The sensation in the dream shifts. The fear spikes. Like my body is screaming, "That's not what you thought it was." Like I've been tricked. I've almost been shot in that city. I've been chased. I've been cornered. I've been grabbed by strangers who act like they've known me forever. There are places I recognize, even though I've never seen them awake. There are people who nod at me like I'm a regular, like I belong there. And that's when Elias shows up again, always at the moment things tip too far. Once I was staying in the hotel and there was this person living in a bathtub. I know how that sounds, but in the dream it was just true, like it was the most normal thing in the world. I'll call them Ren. Ren looked half feral, half gentle, like they'd been surviving in the plumbing for years. And that night, when a couple people tried to pull me out of my room, Ren appeared, silent, fast, and helped me escape. Like they'd been listening the whole time, waiting for the exact second I needed help. I don't know if Elias is part of the nightmare, or part of the defense. Because here's the thing, the city came first. I started dreaming about it before he ever showed up. And then, years later, suddenly he's there, steady, familiar, always warning me away from the worst choices. And when I try to tell people about any of this, they don't believe me. They say I was too young when it started to even know the things I describe. Like I couldn't possibly have invented certain details. Like my brain wouldn't have had the material yet. But I know what I remember. And I know what it feels like when I step back into that city and it greets me like I never left. Sometimes I wake up shaking, heart racing, like I barely made it out alive. And sometimes, this is the part I don't say out loud. I wake up with this weird, heavy gratitude. Like someone walked me to the edge of something awful, put a hand out, and kept me from going over. Like Elias. Like he's been doing it for years. Okay, so let me start by admitting something up front. I'm a skeptic by default. I don't really do ghosts or curses. If anything paranormal happens, my brain immediately files it under science we just haven't pinned down yet. Also, one detail matters a lot here. I grew up in a French-speaking household in Quebec, and when this happened, English was basically a mystery language to me. I could recognize the vibe of it, maybe, but I didn't know it. So, picture this. It's a warm summer evening. I'm maybe 8 years old, and I'm wandering up the street near my place. At the end of the road, there's this stretch of woods. Nothing dramatic, just a little patch of forest with a small clearing before the trees really thicken. Kids would sometimes meet there, build little forts, dare each other to go farther in, that kind of thing. I'm walking around the clearing, half looking for my friends, half just killing time, when I notice something pale on the ground. At first, I think it's a stick. Then I realize it's not a stick. It's a bone. Like, unmistakably a bone. About the length of my forearm, and it's broken. One end looks jagged like something snapped it, and a chunk is missing. My stomach does this tight little flip, but I still crouch down because kids are weird and curiosity is stronger than fear until it suddenly isn't. And right beside it, on the dirt, there's a single drop of blood. Just one. Not a smear, not a trail. One lonely drop, dark and glossy, like it fell from nowhere. Now, the normal thing would have been, nope, and sprint home like my life depended on it. But I didn't. I kind of froze, like my body forgot the next step. I stared at that drop so hard it felt like the rest of the world went quiet around it. And then the drop started to move. Not like it was dripping or spreading. It shifted, like it had intention. It slowly pulled itself into a shape, almost like it was drawing, until it looked like a tiny cross on the ground. My skin went cold. I stood up, bone still in my hand, and that's when everything in front of me changed. The forest, the entire wall of trees, looked dead, burned, like the life had been vacuumed out of it. The trunks were blackened, the leaves gone, the ground ashy. And just past the first line of trees, there was this massive dome structure, like a rounded tent, the kind you'd see in disaster movies. Bigger than a car, maybe 6 or 7 meters across. And there were 2 people in these bright white protective suits, full hazmat gear, faces hidden behind clear masks, walking around the dome like they were inspecting something. They were holding clipboards or instruments, moving carefully, like the ground itself mattered. And above them, this is the part that still makes my throat tighten. There were warning signs. One had that symbol, the radiation trefoil. That part didn't shock me too much, because my stepdad at the time worked with equipment that used radioactive components, always shielded, always handled properly. I'd seen that symbol on cases before, so my brain already had a file folder for it. But the other sign had words, 2 simple words printed in bold. Keep out, in English, not French. And I remember, so clearly, the feeling of my brain catching on it like a snag in fabric, because I understood what it meant, immediately, without translating, without thinking. It landed in me like a warning I'd always known. I looked down at the dirt again, expecting that cross-shaped blood mark to still be there. And it wasn't. Nothing. Just normal ground. I blinked and looked back up. I was standing there holding a broken bone like an idiot, heart thudding, trying to convince myself I hadn't just watched the world crack open. I ran home. At the house, I showed the bone to my mom, my stepdad, and my older brother Lucas. Everyone did the adult thing where they try not to freak a kid out while also being visibly unsettled. They examined it, washed it, turned it over in their hands. After a bit of back and forth and, honestly, some mild arguing, they concluded it was probably from a dog's leg. or something similar. Animal, not human. That was the main comfort. And then, that was it. No explanation for why it was there, how it got snapped, why there'd been blood nearby. We didn't call anyone. We didn't find a carcass. The story kind of stopped. My brother kept the bone for years in a little box of odd keepsakes, like it was proof the whole thing had happened. But here's what's always tripped me up, even more than the burnt forest vision. Those words. Keep out. I didn't start learning English until later, at least a year after that summer. At that age, I couldn't have read it in real life. I didn't have English books. Nobody in my home was speaking it to me casually, and the phrase wasn't something I'd heard and tucked away. So how did my brain hallucinate a sign with perfectly correct English? Two words that carry a very specific tone. Simple, direct, threatening. In a moment where I was supposedly inventing the whole thing. Was it subconscious? Like, maybe I'd seen the phrase on TV somewhere and didn't remember seeing it, but my brain stored it anyway. Maybe I recognized the shape of the words and my fear filled in the meaning. Or maybe I'd heard it once, passing by a construction site, a movie playing in another room, and it stuck deeper than I realized. Or did my kid brain misfire in some totally explainable way? Heat, dehydration, stress, some weird neurological blip? A moment of dissociation where reality slipped and snapped back. I don't want it to be anything mystical. I really don't. The peering into the future idea makes my skin crawl, honestly. But I can't shake the feeling of standing there, bone in hand, staring at a warning I shouldn't have been able to understand, and understanding it anyway. And that's why, even as a skeptic, I still carry this story around like a splinter I can't quite pull out. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you this the way I tell a friend late at night, because that's honestly how it feels in my head. Like I'm trying to make sense of something that keeps slipping through my fingers. About 2 weeks ago, my house started doing this weird thing. And when I say my house, I mean my normal, boring family house. I live here with my family. We've got 2 dogs, and the place was built about 12 years ago. We've lived here forever with 0 paranormal drama. No cold spots, no creepy whispers, nothing. The vibe has always been completely ordinary. And then suddenly, over the last couple weeks, it's like something started testing the water. Not consistently either. It's showing up in different ways, at different times, to different people. That's what messes with me most. My family isn't the type to freak out easily. We're the kind of people who would rather blame a loose vent or a weird reflection than say, ghost. So the fact that even they are getting unsettled? That's saying something. Let me walk you through what happened. So first, a few nights ago, I'll say it was maybe 3 nights back, I was heading upstairs pretty late. The house was quiet, lights mostly off, everyone already in bed. I'm halfway up the staircase when the stair light just clicks off, like someone flipped it. And the thing is, that light has 2 switches, right? Like a switch at the bottom and a switch at the top. Both were in my line of sight. Nobody could have reached either without me seeing them. Also, the bulb didn't pop. It wasn't like it fizzled out. It was just on, and then it wasn't. I froze for a second, mostly because it was so sudden. But I didn't scream. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring like an idiot, trying to decide if I was about to become a person who runs up the stairs in a panic like in every horror movie ever. The next night at dinner, we're talking about it, and my grandma goes, "I thought you were pranking us." And I'm like, "What?" She tells me she'd been lying in bed and saw the light go out under her door, and at the exact same time, she heard this sharp little yelp outside her room, like someone startled. She swears she heard it. But I didn't make a sound. I wasn't even near her door. I was on the stairs, and I had no idea what she meant until she said it. That's when I got that sinking feeling. Not fear exactly, more like confusion, and this gross little tug in my stomach that something wasn't lining up. Then there's what happened to my sister. This one still gives me chills because it's so specific. She was home visiting. She goes to college now. And she was up near the top of the stairs, in the bathroom. The bathroom door was cracked open, and she was looking at herself in the mirror, doing whatever people do in mirrors. She hears someone running up the stairs, fast, and then one of our dogs scrambling after them, nails clicking, like a chase. She assumes it's one of us playing with the dog. But when she looks through the mirror, because the mirror angle catches the hallway, she sees someone. A woman. Like, actually sees her. She says the woman had long, loose hair and this pale, flowy dress, like a nightgown. Not modern looking. Not like pajamas. More like something you'd see in an old photo. My sister kind of freezes because her brain is trying to make it make sense. Then she swings the door open, expecting to catch whoever it is. And there's nobody. No footsteps, no movement. Nothing. Just our dog, standing at the far end of the hallway by himself, staring like he's watching someone who isn't there. That part makes my skin crawl. And then my grandma had her own thing, earlier. This was closer to the beginning of the whole mess, maybe around the first few days. She was home alone in the living room, right near the bottom of the stairs. She said out of the corner of her eye, she saw a dark shape, like a person-shaped shadow, walking past the doorway. Not a flicker, not a light trick, something with movement, like a body moving through space. She checked the whole house. Locked doors, empty rooms, nothing out of place. And she was genuinely shaken, which is rare for her. She told us she's never seen anything like that, and she's also not the type to invent a ghost story for fun. So now we're sitting there like, what is happening? And of course, everyone wants a reason. A trigger. This is why. Here's the part that makes it complicated. I work in EMS, 911 system, and part of what we do includes body removals. My family's first reaction was, something followed you home. And I get why they'd say that, but I honestly don't think that's it. Most of the time, it's not violent or dramatic. It's just death. It's sad, but it's not like I'm in some horror movie situation every shift. But here's the other thing. I took a trip right before all this started. I went to a mountain community in western North Carolina where my extended family has a small cabin. I spent part of my childhood around there. A lot of emotional history tied up in that place. I went because the area was trying to recover after major flooding from a hurricane. So I went to help however I could. And the thing is, the whole region had seen a lot of loss. Not just damage, loss. There was one property I spent a lot of time on, helping with animals, checking fences, hauling things, just doing whatever needed doing. And that property felt heavy. You know when you walk somewhere and your body just reacts before your mind catches up? Like the air feels thick? It reminded me of the feeling you get in places people call haunted. Old prisons, abandoned hospitals. I haven't been to one of those places in years, but the sensation was the same. Like something in your chest tightens, and you can't explain why. The property owner was sleeping in a barn for days after the flooding, completely spiraling. And I'm not saying this for shock. I'm saying it because it matters to the energy of the place. He had dogs. He tried to evacuate, but the evac team told him the dogs couldn't go, and he had a small window of time to handle it. And he shot them. Both of them. I can still feel how wrong that whole story sits in my bones. And while I was helping there, one of the horses died too. Colic. I found it. And if you've ever been around that kind of thing, the smell, the stillness, it stays with you. People in that area have also talked for years about seeing a woman in white. Like, it's a local thing. Stories that come up in casual conversation the way legends do. Half joking, half serious. And then there's one more layer. My sister visiting. She came home that same weekend I got back, and she told me that before she visited, her dorm room had a few weird little incidents. Nothing huge, but enough to make her go, okay, that's odd. And then when she came home, that hallway thing happened. And after she left and went back to school, the dorm weirdness stopped. So now I'm sitting here trying not to make a conspiracy wall out of thumbtacks and string, but it's hard not to notice the timing. Oh, and as if all that isn't enough, there's also a rumor about the land our house sits on. Supposedly, before the neighborhood was built, there was a domestic tragedy here. A man killed his family and then himself. But here's what I can't get past. We've lived here for more than a decade, and nothing. Not a single strange thing. Not once. So why now? Why 2 weeks of weirdness after years of normal? That's the question that keeps looping in my head. Because I don't know what I believe. I'm not trying to summon anything. Nobody in this house plays with boards or tries to invite spirits or anything like that. We're not dabbling. We're just living our lives. And then suddenly the lights are going out. My grandma's hearing sounds that didn't happen. My sister's seeing someone who isn't there. And our dog is acting like he's tracking movement in empty space. And I keep asking myself if this is something that followed me, or something that woke up, or just a pile of coincidences that happen to be perfectly timed in the worst possible way. But I'll tell you what, whether it's paranormal or not, the house doesn't feel the same at night anymore. And that's the part I hate the most. So, I'm going to start by saying this. Before this happened, I'd never had anything even close to paranormal. No ghosts, no weird feelings, nothing. And I'm not someone who goes looking for that kind of stuff either. This was about 5 years ago. I was 26 at the time, living at home for a bit, and my bedroom was down in the basement, right at the bottom of this narrow stairwell that opened straight into my room. It was one of those nights where you're not even tired, just awake, you know? I'm in bed, it's creeping toward 2 in the morning, and I'm doing the usual mindless scroll on my phone. My cat back then, his name was Milo, was curled up between my legs, completely knocked out. Warm, heavy, dead to the world asleep. And then, out of nowhere, Milo snaps awake like someone flipped a switch. Not sleepy awake, not heard a noise awake. I mean laser focused. He sits up and stares at the stairwell like he's looking at something that's standing there. His whole body goes stiff. His ears flatten slightly. And then he starts doing that low, deep growl cats almost never do. The kind that doesn't even sound like it should come out of them. I'm instantly unsettled because cats don't fake that. That's not, I saw a bug. That's something is wrong. His fur puffs up, tail thick, back raised. The full classic poofed up look. And while he's still facing the stairs, still growling, he starts backing up. Slowly, carefully. Like whatever he's seeing, he does not want to turn his back on it. Meanwhile, I'm sitting there watching him, and I can feel my stomach dropping because I'm thinking, okay, what are you seeing that I'm not seeing? I'm frozen. I'm not even breathing normally. I just sit up in bed, like my body is trying to get away without actually moving. Milo keeps backing up until he's pressed fully against me, like he's trying to crawl into my chest. And then, for the first time, he hisses. Not a quick little leave me alone hiss. This one was sharp and vicious, like he was warning something to stay back. And the second he does it, I feel it. This wave. It's like an icy blanket of air, but it doesn't just hit me. It moves through me. A cold sweep from head to toe that makes every hair on my body stand up. I remember thinking it didn't feel like normal cold either. It felt wrong, dirty, like the feeling you get when you step in something disgusting barefoot, except it was all over my skin and under it at the same time. I actually whispered out loud without even meaning to, "Oh, hell no." And that was it for me. I didn't investigate. I didn't stare into the dark like a movie character. I scooped Milo up. He was shaking, still tense, and I carried him upstairs to a different bedroom and shut the door behind us. I slept with the lights on. I'm not ashamed to say it. Now here's the part that made it stick with me, because if it had just been the cat, I might have convinced myself he'd heard a pipe or smelled something weird. The next day, I'm talking to my mom about it, kind of half joking but also not joking at all. I tell her everything. How Milo stared at the stairs, how he growled, how I felt that cold rush like something passed over me. And my mom goes quiet. Then she tells me she hadn't mentioned it yet, but the day before, earlier that same evening, she'd been at a funeral for someone she knew through work. And on the drive home from the cemetery, she said she had this unmistakable feeling like she wasn't alone in the car. When she told me that, I swear my skin went cold again, because the timing lined up too perfectly. It wasn't just one weird moment. It felt like the same something, moving from one place to another looking for, I don't know, attention, heat, energy, a spot to land. Later that day, we didn't mess around. We opened windows, burned sage, said prayers, whatever you want to call it. We just made it clear that anything that didn't belong there needed to leave. My mom spoke out loud, firm and calm, like she was setting rules in her own home. And after that, nothing. No more staring, no more growling, no more cold wave. But I'll tell you what, ever since that night, I don't look at reality the same way. I don't act like I have answers, but I also don't shrug everything off anymore. Because I know what I felt. And I know my cat wasn't reacting to my imagination. So yeah, say your prayers, eat your vegetables, and if your cat starts growling at an empty stairwell at 2 a.m, believe your cat. So I grew up in San Diego in the early 90s, and my brother and I were total latchkey kids. Both my parents worked long hours, so a lot of afternoons we'd let ourselves in, toss our backpacks down, and just figure it out until they got home. Our house was older, creaky in that normal, lived-in way, but it never felt scary. I didn't walk around feeling dread or anything like that. Still, there's this one weird little thing I remember from back then. Sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night and swear I could see shadowy outlines, like people-shaped silhouettes, standing near my bed. I'd always do the same thing. Pull the blanket over my head and tell myself, okay, cool. I watched something creepy on TV. My brain is being dramatic. And honestly, most nights I'd fall right back asleep like it was nothing. But one evening, something happened that didn't feel like a half dream. It was one of those early winter nights where the sun disappears way too fast. So even though it was only around 5:30 or 6, it was already dark outside. I was in the bedroom we shared, and my brother, Noah, was out cold on his bed, totally knocked out. I was sitting on the carpet near the dresser, flipping through a comic book or maybe a library book. I can't remember exactly. What I do remember is how quiet everything was. Not the cozy kind of quiet either, the kind where you notice how still the air feels. On top of our dresser, there was one of those old-school setups. Big wooden dresser, giant mirror attached, the kind that makes your room feel twice as big. And sitting on the dresser was a postcard, face down. Just a random mailer, one of those cheesy promotional postcards. This one had a photo of a woman by a pool, like some vacation deal or hotel advertisement. Not scandalous or anything, just oddly specific, and honestly, I still don't know why it was even in our room. Anyway, for some reason, I kept staring at it. And then, without any warning, the postcard moved. It didn't slide. It didn't flutter. It didn't slowly creep to the edge. It just flipped up. Like someone pinched one end and popped it upright. 1 second it was face down, flat on the dresser, and the next it was standing up, leaned neatly against the mirror like it had been placed there on purpose. I remember freezing, not in a screaming kind of way, but in that silent, wide-eyed way where your body is waiting for your brain to explain what you just saw. I looked straight at Noah to see if he'd woken up. He hadn't even twitched. I looked around the room, like I expected to catch a curtain moving or feel air from a vent. Nothing. No windows open, no fan, no heater kicking on, no draft, no footsteps, no creak of the house settling right at that moment. Just stillness, like the room was holding its breath. And what's strange is, I wasn't terrified. I was confused, sure, completely puzzled, but it didn't feel threatening. It felt intentional, like something had gently tapped me on the shoulder just to prove it could. I didn't touch the postcard right away. I just stared at it, trying to talk myself out of what I'd seen. But I couldn't, because I watched it happen. I wasn't half asleep. I wasn't imagining it. I was sitting there, fully awake, in a quiet room, and something that shouldn't have moved, moved. Because that's exactly what it was. Not a horror movie moment. Not something evil. Not some dramatic haunting. Just one small, impossible little gesture that made me realize the world might be a lot weirder than we like to admit. And that's the thing. It didn't follow me. Nothing else like that ever happened again in the same way. It was like that house held on to its own strange energy, and once we moved, it stayed behind. Years later, I found out the house is gone now, torn down, and there's a townhouse complex sitting where it used to be. And whenever I think about that, I wonder if the new people living there ever get that same kind of quiet little hello, that tiny, unexplainable nudge that makes you stop, look around, and realize you're not as alone as you thought. So, let me back up a little, because this didn't start out dramatic. It started as this quiet, uneasy sense, the kind you can't prove to anyone, but your body insists it's real. When we first moved into this house, the vibe was off. Not like, ooh, spooky old home, off. More like, something bad happened here, off. I remember walking down the hallway and getting this uncomfortable feeling that someone had been hurt in that space, like the air itself still remembered it. And before I even noticed anything physical, I kept feeling watched, specifically from the far end of the hall, like something was posted up there, just paying attention. Then later, I actually saw the details that matched the feeling. There were patched spots in the walls, and a couple doors looked like they'd been repaired in a way that didn't feel accidental, like they'd taken a beating at some point. Especially that door at the end. It made my stomach sink, because it felt like confirmation. Back then, I did a simple cleansing. Nothing flashy. Just went through, claimed the place as ours, said a few firm words out loud, set the tone, that kind of thing. And honestly, it worked. The house settled. For years it was calmer, lighter, and the creepy edge faded into the background. Fast forward to this year. Things had been stable for a long time, and we had a roommate stay with us for a while. Her name was Danny. She wasn't a bad presence or anything. If anything, she was friendly and kept to herself. But after she moved out, my partner Mara and I both had that feeling like, okay, time to reset the energy. So we did another cleanse. We went room to room with smoke. This time it was rosemary and cedar, because that's what we had. And we started upstairs in our bedroom, then worked outward, like we were sweeping the house clean from the inside out. The first rooms were completely normal. Quiet, almost boring in a good way. But when we got near the bathroom at the end of the hall, I swear my whole body reacted before my brain could catch up. It was this sudden wave of fear, like childhood-level fear, the kind adults don't usually feel without a reason. My skin went cold. My stomach dropped. And it wasn't just, I'm nervous. It was revulsion. Like every instinct in me was yelling, don't go in there. Don't speak. Leave. And at the same time, I felt stuck, frozen. Like my legs wanted to move but didn't know how. I pushed through anyway. I walked in with Mara right behind me. We did the cleansing, and I said my little phrase, the same kind of, this is our home, only peace stays here, wording I've used forever. And just like that, the feeling snapped off, like someone turned a light switch. The air cleared. I didn't tell Mara what I felt though. I didn't want to plant the idea in her head or freak her out. I figured, maybe it was just me. But when we finished and sat down afterward, I asked her casually, trying to sound neutral, hey, did you feel anything weird during that? And she hesitated, and then she went, actually, yeah. And I felt my stomach tighten immediately. She said, in the bathroom, it felt like something went straight through me. So I told her what I'd felt, how intense it was, how I almost couldn't move. And then she got quiet and said she'd had this sudden, vivid mental image, like it had been dropped into her mind from nowhere, of a bathtub with a bloodied body in it. And listen, Mara does not talk like that. She's not dramatic. She doesn't go looking for scary stuff. So when she said it, it hit different. It gave me full-body chills. After that, things in the house ramped up over the next week in a way that felt personal. Then one night, after a particularly bad stretch of sleep, I woke up, and Mara woke up right after me, like we were linked. She told me she'd been having a scary dream, and even though it was hazy, she remembered one thing clearly. Something in the dream told her she had no idea how powerful it was. That made my blood run cold, because I'd already felt like I'd heard movement in the house before we even went to bed that night. So I got up, and I did what I do when I'm trying to reset the atmosphere. I spoke protections into the corners of the room, sprayed a little frankincense mist we keep around, and then I guided Mara through a protective visualization. Bright light, like a shield around her, steady breathing, grounding, the whole thing. She calmed down a little. And then, here's where it gets really strange. Right after that, as I was falling back asleep, I suddenly realized I wasn't in bed anymore. I was standing in the room. And the second I thought, wait, wasn't I just lying down? I would snap awake in bed. It happened again. Same thing. I'd wake up standing somewhere else in the house, start to question it, and bam, I'd wake up for real. After a few rounds of this, I finally thought, okay, this is a lucid dream. If I'm going to be stuck in this loop, I might as well use it. So the next time it happened, I stayed calm and moved through the house. Slow, careful, like I was listening with more than my ears, and I could feel it. That same heavy, dark presence, exactly like the bathroom feeling, that overpowering pressure that makes you want to freeze. I followed it, and when it got so intense I could barely move or speak, I called in protection, like invoking guardians, whatever you want to call it. In the dream, it worked immediately. The pressure eased enough for me to breathe and keep going. I moved toward the back of the house, opened a door, and instead of outside, it led into this cozy little coffee shop. Warm lights, soft chatter, the smell of espresso, completely out of place, but weirdly comforting. Behind the counter was a barista, Elena, around my age, with this calm, grounded presence. The second she saw me, she smiled like she'd been expecting me and said, "Oh, you're here. We were just talking about you." And I can't explain it, but I knew she wasn't just a random dream character. There was something protective about her, like she was the kind of being that doesn't get rattled, the kind that stands between you and something dangerous. We talked briefly, and then I asked her directly about the presence in the house, what it was, why it felt like that. And she said, very clearly, like she was choosing the words carefully, "I am haunted by Rosius." The name hit my ears in a strange way, like it had extra letters in it that I couldn't quite see. It sounded almost like Rosius, but I had this distinct sense there was an E in the middle, like it mattered. And what stuck with me most was how she phrased it, like she was the one being haunted by it, not me, not the house, her. And right after she said that, it was like something grabbed me. I felt myself being yanked backward, like pulled through a tunnel, and I snapped awake in my bed, breathing hard. Afterward, I couldn't stop thinking about Danny, our former roommate. Not because I blame her, but because she was into witchy stuff too. She had this tarot deck, something edgy with a warning label, like it was meant to call in certain entities and not to be used lightly. I don't know what she did with it, and I genuinely don't think she meant harm, but it's hard not to connect dots when things shifted so sharply after she left. Since that night, Mara and I have been doing more grounding and protection, and the house has been calmer. Not perfect, but calmer. Like the volume got turned down. So that's where I'm at. It's not like I'm trying to invite chaos into my life. I just want my home to feel like mine again. And I can't shake the feeling that whatever this is, it doesn't like us noticing it. Okay, so I normally go through life acting like ghosts are firmly in the fun story category. Like, yeah, sure, spooky vibes, love a campfire tale. Then someone brings the topic up, and it's like my brain goes, "Oh, you wanted memories? Here you go." And suddenly, I'm not so confident in my skepticism. The first thing I ever remember happening was when I was little, definitely not older than 9. It was one of those nights where the whole house felt extra quiet, like even the air was asleep. I got up to use the bathroom, half awake, doing that careful kid walk where you're trying not to step on any creaky spots. My parents' bedroom door was cracked open, and as I passed it, I glanced in without really thinking. And I swear I saw a woman in a white nightdress standing at their dresser mirror. Long hair just hanging there, like she'd been standing for a while. The thing that threw me instantly was, it didn't look like my mom. My mom kept her hair short back then and never wore anything like that. And the mirror, there wasn't really a reflection the way there should have been. But it was a quick glance, a blink and you miss it kind of moment. So I'm in the bathroom telling myself, you're half asleep. You imagined it. Your eyes are playing tricks. That's what eyes do at night. Except the whole time I'm washing my hands, I can feel my stomach doing that weird sinking thing. Like my body already knows it didn't imagine anything. And then I walked back, and I looked again, and she was still there, except now she wasn't standing in front of the mirror. She was standing on the other side of it, like as if the mirror was a doorway, and she was on the far side, facing out, facing me. No one was in front of the dresser at all, just her, where a reflection would be, staring directly into the room. I didn't do the brave kid thing. I did the very unbrave kid thing. I ran. I sprinted back to my room and I screamed so hard my throat hurt. I dove under my blanket like it could protect me from, I don't know, physics? Spirits? Mirrors? I stayed under there trembling until my mom came rushing in. When I told her, she did that parent thing where she tried to make her voice gentle and normal. "It's nothing, sweetheart, you were dreaming." But I could tell she was unsettled too, like she didn't want to go near their bedroom right away. And after that, I avoided mirrors for ages, like years. If I had to pass one at night, I would look anywhere but at it. Then there was another one. This time I was older, and it was Christmas Eve. The house was warm and bright, you know, that cozy holiday feeling, which honestly makes it creepier, because it wasn't like some abandoned, haunted place. It was just home. I stepped into the hallway and I saw a hand. Just a hand. No arm. No person. A pale hand wearing this chunky ring with a dark red stone, like a garnet or a ruby, resting on the banister. And it wasn't plopped there like someone had left it. It was moving, gliding along the banister the way someone's hand does when they walk up the stairs slowly, trailing their fingers along the wood. I froze so completely I felt locked into the floor. I just watched it, helpless, while it kept going up, sliding along the rail like it had somewhere to be. And I followed it with my eyes all the way until it disappeared around the curve where you can't see the top from the hallway. And I still didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my brain had pulled the emergency brake. And then there's the one I don't remember personally, but my family has told me enough times it feels like it belongs to me anyway. Apparently I was 3, and we'd gone to visit my granddad's grave not long after he'd been buried. It was our first time going, and everyone was emotional, quiet, doing the slow walk between headstones. My mom says I was holding her hand, and suddenly I asked, really casually, if we could go say hello to Granddad. They did the gentle explaining, "Oh, love, he's not here anymore," that kind of thing. But apparently I pointed toward the far back corner of the graveyard and said, very matter of fact, "Yes, he is. He's over there." And then I traced something with my finger like I was watching someone move, like I was following a person no one else could see. And after a moment I just went, "Oh, never mind. He's gone now." Everyone swears there was no one else there, just us. No visitor to confuse things, no passerby, nothing. So yeah, those are my little greatest hits of maybe ghosts are real and my brain is lying to me for comfort. And none of it felt angry, if that makes sense. It was scary, absolutely, terrifying even, but not like something was trying to hurt me. More like something sharing space with us for a moment. And honestly, if my granddad really did come by to check on us, and I was the only one who could see him, that part is kind of sweet. Still freaky. Still makes my skin prickle when I think about it. But sweet. In a, please don't ever do that again, sort of way. So, first thing, I was completely sober. Like, dead sober. No booze, no anything. Honestly, I've been pretty clean for days, and I hadn't taken so much as a sleep aid. It started with this weird, almost stupidly specific feeling that there was an animal under my bed. Not even a scary monster under the bed vibe, more like a dog, like a real dog, wedged under there, scratching and chewing at the box spring. At first I tried to ignore it, but it kept happening. So I did what anyone would do. I thumped the mattress once with my fist, kind of a knock it off move. And every time I did, the noise stopped immediately, like I'd hit pause on it. After a few rounds of that, scratch, scratch, thump, silence, I finally grabbed my flashlight and checked under the bed. Nothing. I checked again. Slower. Angles. Corners. No dog. No anything. Just dust and the usual junk you pretend you'll organize someday. I got back into bed, telling myself it was some random settling noise or my brain being dramatic. And then, she was just there, standing beside the bed, not doing anything, not saying anything, just there. I couldn't see her face clearly, and it's hard to explain this without sounding ridiculous, but every time I tried to look straight at her, she'd turn away like she was avoiding the catch. Like if I got a clean look at her, the whole thing would collapse. But even without seeing her properly, I knew it was her. Not, I think it's her. Not, she kind of resembles her. I knew. Her name's not even important here, because I'm going to change it anyway. Let's call her Mira. But the feeling was exact. That familiar presence, like your body recognizes someone before your eyes do. I asked her questions. Quiet ones, because it was the middle of the night, and I still had this half-belief I'd snap out of it. Stuff like, "Is that you?" And, "Why are you here?" And, "What's happening?" And she answered, but barely. One-word answers. "Yeah. No. Later." If I tried to get details, if I asked her to explain, she wouldn't. It wasn't hostile, more like she couldn't, or didn't want to, or it wasn't allowed. At one point I asked, "Can you come closer?" And she said something like, "I can't." And then I said, "Can you touch me?" She didn't even hesitate, just, "No." That hit harder than I expected, because Mira, back when she was really in my life, was the kind of person who hugged you like she meant it, like she could press the worry right out of your ribs. So hearing "no" made my chest do that tight, sinking thing. Then she said, very calmly, "I'll be right back." And I swear to you, she walked directly toward the wall at the foot of my bed. No door, no hallway, just wall. And she passed into it like it was fog and vanished. That was the exact moment something in me shifted from, "This is a dream," to, "Okay, wait, I'm awake." Because I sat up, fully. I swung my legs over the side of the bed. I touched my nightstand. I pinched my arm like an idiot. I felt everything. I was present in my body. I was in my room. And she was gone. A few minutes passed, maybe less, maybe more. Time gets weird in those moments. Then she came back. And this part is so absurd it's almost funny. She returned with a small bag of snacks, like the kind you'd grab from a convenience store when you're trying to feel better about being awake at a cruel hour. Except, she didn't come through a door. She didn't carry them in from anywhere. They sort of appeared from the folds of my comforter, like my blanket was a magician's sleeve. She held them up like, "See? I brought something." Eventually, she sat on the edge of the bed. Then she lay down beside me, not quite touching. And this is where it got gentler, strangely normal, like we were two people trying to make the best of impossible rules. She couldn't touch me directly, but with the blanket between us, she kind of brushed her feet against mine, softly, like testing the edge of a boundary. Like the blanket made it possible, or safer, or less real, in whatever way reality needed it to be. We didn't push it after that. No experiments. No, okay, now try your hand, or any of that. We just talked. Not like a dramatic reunion, more like the kind of talk you fall into when someone knows you too well. The kind where you don't have to perform. Where silence doesn't feel like punishment. And the whole time I had this feeling in my chest that I hadn't felt in years, like an old connection lighting up again. Not nostalgia exactly, something deeper. Like my body remembered the shape of that bond and just resumed it. For context, and I'll keep this vague on purpose, Mira and I had the kind of connection people call soulmate when they don't know what else to call it. Not because it was perfect, but because it felt undeniable. It ended because life got messy in a way neither of us could fix, not because we stopped caring. So having her there, in my room, in that quiet hour, it didn't feel like meeting a stranger. It felt like recognizing a frequency. Around 5 in the morning, right when the dark outside starts thinning, right when you can feel the night losing its grip, she sat up and said something like, "I have to go." Then she walked into my bathroom. And this is where the room turned into a glitch. She stepped forward like she was climbing stairs, except there were no stairs. No ladder, no attic access, no ceiling hatch, just empty bathroom air. But she climbed anyway, as if there was a staircase only she could see. She went up, out of sight. Then she came back down once, maybe twice. Each time she stood silently near my bed, almost like she was waiting for something to finish, like stretching before a long trip, or pausing because she didn't want to leave yet. I tried to look directly at her when she did that, and every time I did, she would thin out. Not disappear instantly, but fade, like my attention itself broke whatever kept her here. So I watched from the corner of my vision, like you do with a shy animal you don't want to spook. Finally, she went up the invisible stairs again, and this time, she didn't come back. I waited. Then I got up and went into the bathroom, because some part of me needed to confirm something with my own eyes. No hole in the ceiling, no hidden door, no attic stairs, no draft, nothing. Just my normal, boring bathroom. And I stood there, staring up like an idiot, feeling this mix of warmth and dread and longing I can't quite translate. Because it wasn't just what happened, it was how it felt. I felt her. I felt that old, powerful connection snap back into place like it had been waiting somewhere behind the walls of my life. And I don't know what to do with that. So yeah, now I'm left with the questions everyone would ask. Was I sleep deprived and half dreaming? Was it some kind of lucid state that convinced me I was awake? Am I so lonely my brain is building comfort out of thin air? Or was it something stranger? Some kind of projection, some shared moment, some impossible overlap? And the darkest question, the one I don't even like typing, was this a real ghost kind of encounter? I'm not asking anyone to tell me it's definitely paranormal or definitely psychological. I don't want to be laughed at for saying it out loud. If you've ever had anything even remotely like this, something that felt real in your body, not just in your imagination, I'd honestly like to hear how you made sense of it. Because right now, all I have is the memory of a presence by my bed, the soft brush of feet through a blanket, and the quiet feeling that someone I haven't seen in a long time somehow found her way back to me for a few hours before dawn. So, I want to tell you about something that happened this week, and I'm still not totally sure what to make of it. On Tuesday, my great-aunt Mireille passed away in her sleep. She was 78. It was completely unexpected, and it hit our family hard, especially that whole side of the family, because she was the one who held everyone together. You know those people who feel like the center of a family? That was her. Mireille was deeply involved in her church here in Luxembourg. She sang in the local choir for years, faithful, consistent, always showing up. And she always loved hearing me sing too. Every time I performed, she'd get emotional, like really emotional, tears in her eyes, squeezing my hands afterward, telling me thank you like I'd given her something priceless. And as a singer, that kind of reaction can be weirdly hard to process. Because in my head I'm thinking, it's just my voice. How is this affecting you that much? I don't fully understand it. But I've always respected it because it was so sincere. She meant it. When she died, her kids, my cousins, insisted I sing at the funeral. They didn't even frame it as a question. It was just, you're singing for her. And honestly, I wanted to. It felt like a final gift I could offer. The funeral was this past Saturday, so on Thursday morning, I went to the church with my pianist, Noah, to rehearse. It's the same church Mireille sang in. Same altar, same pews, same familiar echo when you speak. We rehearsed for almost 2 hours, and the whole time it was just the two of us in there, completely alone. And I need you to understand this. The energy in the church was not creepy, not heavy, not eerie. It was calm. Quiet in a comforting way. If anything, it felt gentle, like the building itself was holding its breath. When we finished, we packed up our things and started walking toward the big main entrance doors. These doors are massive, tall, old, and seriously heavy. The handle is this thick, rusty metal that you have to pull down with real intention to open it. It's not one of those doors that moves easily. You feel it when it moves. Noah and I were just chatting, totally normal, casual conversation, while we walked. And right as I reached out my right hand, about to grab the handle moved. Not violently, not like a bang, just slow, down, and then back up again. Like someone on the other side was opening the door for us, or testing it, or starting to come in. And my first thought wasn't fear at all. I just assumed, oh, someone's there. So I instinctively stepped a little to the side, like you do when you're making room for someone to enter. I waited 1 second, 2 seconds. Nothing. So I pulled the door open myself, expecting to see someone walking in, and there was nobody. No footsteps, no person, no movement, just empty space outside. That's when I got confused. I turned around and asked Noah, "Did you see that?" But he'd been half a step behind me, and he hadn't been looking at the handle at the exact moment. He just blinked at me like, "See what?" So I tried to recreate it. I closed the door and opened it again, tried to gently move the handle the same way I'd seen it move. Slow down, slow up. And I couldn't, because it's too heavy. If you move it, you hear it. It resists you. It doesn't glide. What I saw was smooth, deliberate, like a hand was on it. But when I tried to do it softly, I physically couldn't. Not without that loud metallic scrape. Noah and I kind of stared at each other. Then we laughed. Because what else do you do when something doesn't make sense? We shrugged it off and walked out. But I'll be honest with you, it stayed with me. And maybe that sounds ridiculous. Maybe it was air pressure. Maybe the building settled. Maybe it was just one of those strange, perfectly timed mechanical things. But I've never seen anything like that in my life. Only in movies. And it happened 4 days ago, right here in Luxembourg, in the same church where I was preparing to sing goodbye. So, I don't know. What do you think that was? So, I was about 16 when this happened, and even now, it still creeps up on me when I think about it. I've always had this weird fear of dolls. Not like, oh, they're kind of creepy. I mean like, I genuinely hated being in the same room with them. But my older sister, well, Lena, she was the total opposite. She adored dolls, collected them, dressed them up, the whole thing. The worst one was this big princess doll. Pretty face, shiny hair, perfect little arms and legs, just sitting there, looking innocent like it wasn't plotting something. In our house, we had this tall mirror in one of the first-floor bedrooms. The mirror had this wide shelf built into the top, like a display ledge for toys and random stuff. It sat right next to a big double bed, and Lena had decided that the princess doll belonged up there, perched on the ledge like a tiny queen, overlooking the room. And I should mention, our house was huge. Like, the kind of place where footsteps echo even when nobody's trying to be creepy. Each floor had a bunch of rooms, enough that if you were alone, it could feel a little too quiet. One week, my family had to go visit relatives for a couple of days. My parents left with my brother and Lena, and I stayed behind because I had exams. Honestly, I didn't even mind. I was a gamer, so I was thinking, great, 2 nights of peace, late night snacks, no one telling me to sleep. The first night, though, I don't know what got into me. I randomly decided I wanted to watch a horror movie. And of course I picked something about a creepy doll, because why not make your own life harder, right? By the time the movie ended, it was almost midnight. The rain outside had started picking up, tapping against the windows, that kind of steady, heavy sound. And then I did the dumbest thing. I looked around my empty house and said, out loud, like I was joking with the walls, "All right, if there's anything in here, show yourself." The second the words left my mouth, the power went out. Not like a flicker, full blackout. And at almost the exact same moment, I heard this loud thump somewhere deeper in the house. Not a small sound. Not a, maybe something shifted. It sounded like something heavy hit the floor. My stomach dropped so fast I swear I felt cold. I tried to laugh it off, but my voice didn't cooperate. I called out again, this time a lot less brave. "If there's someone in here, a thief or something, just take whatever you want, okay? Just don't come near me." And then nothing. No more noise, just the rain and my own breathing. That silence was worse. After a few minutes of standing there, frozen, I grabbed a kitchen knife because, I don't know, I guess I thought I was suddenly the hero in some movie. My hands were sweating so badly I almost dropped it. I turned on my phone flashlight and started checking rooms one by one. Every hallway felt longer than it should have. Every doorway looked like it was hiding something. But everything seemed normal. Until I reached the bedroom with the mirror. I opened that door, and I swear my heart punched my ribs. Because that doll, Lena's princess doll that I hated, wasn't on the mirror ledge anymore. That ledge was empty. And for a second, my brain just refused to understand what I was seeing. Like it was buffering. Like, no, that's wrong. That's not what's supposed to be there. Then it hit me all at once, and I let out this scream I didn't even recognize as mine. I backed up so fast I almost tripped, and I ran into another room and just stood there, shaking, trying not to panic. I just watched a horror movie. The power went out right after I challenged the house. There was a loud crash, and now the doll is gone. I forced myself to breathe, and after a minute, or maybe 10, I honestly don't know, I went back. Knife still in my hand, phone light shaking all over the walls. I stepped inside and scanned the room, and there it was. The doll was sitting on the floor right beneath the mirror, like it had simply fallen off the ledge. Which should have been comforting, right? Except, it didn't look like it had fallen naturally. It was sitting too neatly, upright, facing out, like it had landed on purpose. I told myself I was overthinking it. I picked it up with 2 fingers like it was contaminated, set it back on top of the mirror, and, this is the part that makes me feel ridiculous, I actually mumbled, sorry, okay? Like I was apologizing to a doll. And as I turned to leave, I caught movement in the corner of my eye. Just a tiny shift. It looked like the doll's head angled slightly, and one of its hands twitched, just a little. I froze. My brain immediately tried to rescue me. It's the wind. The window's open. Air pressure. You're tired. Your imagination. But my body didn't care about logic. Every hair on my arms stood up. I backed out of the room without turning my back to it, shut the door, and I didn't go near that mirror again for the rest of the night. Even now, years later, I can tell you exactly how that room looked in my phone flashlight, and exactly what it felt like to see that doll sitting there like it had been waiting for me. And honestly, I still don't like dolls. Not even a little. So this story isn't even mine at first. It was my mom who told it to me. We live out in western Washington, tucked into this pocket of trees and wildlife where the yard just kind of melts into the forest. Our place sits on a couple acres, big enough that at night the darkness feels thick. And honestly, weird little sounds have happened out here before. Branch snaps, something moving where it shouldn't be, the usual country at night creepiness. But we've lived here for over a decade, and nothing has ever sounded like an actual person saying actual words. Until this. This happened about a week and a half ago. It was late, fully dark, the kind of night where the sky looks like a lid. My mom, Marlene, was doing the last dog trip before bed. We have this long driveway, and maybe 20 steps down from the house, there's a small storage shed. Past that is a fence line, and on the other side is our neighbor's property, which, to be honest, just looks like endless woods. Mom had one earbud in, listening to an audiobook, half paying attention the way you do when you've done the same routine 1,000 times. The dogs were sniffing around like normal, not acting spooked at all. And then she thought she heard a man's voice. Not loud, not close, just there. At first, her brain didn't even catch up. Like she heard it, but it didn't register as real, because why would it be? And the dogs didn't react, so she kept moving. A few seconds later, she heard it again. This time, she froze, and she said she was pretty sure it said, "Help me." That's when she pulled the earbud out and just stood there, listening, holding her flashlight steady like she could somehow pin the sound down with light. And then it came again, clear as day. "Help me." I asked her later what it sounded like. Like, was it panicked? Strained? Desperate? And she shook her head and said that's the worst part. It was calm, level, almost polite. No urgency, no emotion. Even when she repeated it for me, her voice went flat and even, like she was mimicking the exact tone. And that made my skin crawl in a way I can't really explain. So she does what you're not supposed to do. She calls back. Just instinct, I guess. Like, "Hello?" and "Are you okay?" She's shining the flashlight into the trees, sweeping it back and forth, trying to catch a shape between the trunks. But there's nothing. No movement. No outline. No reflective eyes. Just brush and darkness and that fence line. And then, after a short pause, she hears something big crash through the woods. Not like a person stepping on twigs, not a careful walk, more like something heavy forcing its way through branches. She told me it sounded wrong for a human. Too big, too low, too solid. And she couldn't tell you why, but she said it didn't sound like it was moving on two legs. That's when the dogs finally lost it. Barking like crazy, hackles up, pulling toward the house like they'd suddenly remembered they could be scared. My mom didn't hesitate. She turned around and went straight back inside. And I remember this part so clearly because I was in my room watching a video on the TV, just minding my business. She comes in looking tense, eyes wide, and she blurts out, "Did your video say help me at any point?" And I was so confused, and honestly a little annoyed. Like, no? What are you talking about? I told her no, and her face just tightened. Like she'd been hoping I'd say yes so she could laugh it off. But Mom noticed the neighbor's place beyond the fence looked dark, like their power might have been out. That detail stuck with her, like maybe it meant something. Like maybe someone had wandered off in the dark. Or maybe it meant absolutely nothing, which somehow felt worse. And then there's the part that makes me feel even less normal about it, because it wasn't the first time something strange happened in that same area. Last fall, my boyfriend Eli and I were outside around dusk, not fully dark yet, but heading there. We were closer to that fence line, a little farther past the shed, and we heard this sound that I can only describe as a sharp inhale, like a gasp you make when you choke on water or swallow wrong. Except it didn't sound human. It repeated, again and again. And then it started getting closer, because we could hear branches snapping in the direction it was coming from, not like a squirrel hopping, not like a deer delicately moving, more like whatever it was didn't care if it made noise. We didn't stick around to investigate. We ran, full sprint back to the house. And just like my mom, we never saw anything. Not a shadow, not eyes, nothing. Afterward, we did that thing people always do. We went online, listened to animal calls, tried to match it to anything. Owls, foxes, elk, cougars, and nothing sounded even remotely close. So when Mom told me about the voice, I felt my stomach drop. Like my body understood something before my brain could make sense of it. Just this immediate dread, cold and heavy. We do have some sketchy people living a ways off. Not right next door, but close enough that you hear shouting sometimes. Folks with a reputation for stealing, for fighting late at night, for being in and out of trouble. That's my mom's most rational explanation. Maybe it was someone messing around. Maybe someone trying to lure her out. Maybe somebody strung out and wandering. But honestly, that explanation freaks me out too, because it means a real person might have been out there saying, "Help me," in that flat, calm voice, and then crashing through the woods toward her. Mom got goosebumps telling me, like even retelling it made her body remember. She admitted she debated for days whether she should even bring it up to me, because she didn't want to plant fear in my head. Too late, obviously. We still don't know what it was. We don't have an answer that fits neatly. But we did change things. Mom doesn't go outside alone after dark anymore, not even for quick stuff. And if she does step out, she's fully alert. No earbuds, no distractions. And I hate that this is true, but the scariest part isn't even the words. It's how normal the voice sounded, and how calm it was when it asked for help.